welcome to the stage the founder and CEO of Unreasonable Group, Mr. Daniel Epstein.
I think I'll begin with words of gratitude. I thank you all sincerely for taking time out of your remarkably busy schedules, for those of you who are in the room and for those of you who are live streaming in, to get a glimpse of what we believe the future has in store for us. My name is Daniel Epstein, founder of Unreasonable, beyond privileged to be in this partnership with Barclays, our co-creators of Unreasonable Impact. And today we're going to find out what Unreasonable Impact is all about and what it really means. But before we do that, I actually want us to get a sense of the place that we're in right now. I was doing a little research about 15 minutes before this. I had learned that the Royal Institution of Great Britain was founded in 1799. And it was a place, a stated mission of inventing, exploring, and sharing with the public new technologies and inventions. That is exactly what we are going to be doing today. We are going to meet and be introduced to new disruptive technologies that have the possibility of reframing society today and tomorrow. Out of the Royal Institution over the last almost 300 years, over 200 years, there have been 15 Nobel laureates who have been a part of this institution. 10 of the elements on the periodic table were discovered in this building. And so in that tradition, we are just like the scientists and inventors of the past. We're going to explore the future together. Now, before we go into the future, though, I'd actually like to take us backwards in time once more. And this is back to the country where I'm from, the United States. This is New York City, 1900. This is Fifth Avenue in New York City. It's Easter morning. And if you look at this photograph, the question is, can you find the car? Do you see the automobile? 1900 New York City, Fifth Avenue. Does anybody see it? If you look really closely, you'll see that there's one internal combustion vehicle on this road. Now imagine if you were a bystander, if you're on the sidewalk and you're standing next to your friends, if you could whisper to one of your friends, I think that in 10 years, all of these horse-drawn chariots are going to be erased, and it's all going to be this new complicated technology called internal combustion engines. What do you think your friends would have said? They would have said you're crazy, right? If we fast forward in time, 1913, this is the same street, it's Easter Day, it's Manhattan, it's Fifth Avenue. 13 years later, the question is, can you see the horse-drawn chariot in this photo? There is one. There's literally one in this entire photo, right? 13 years, we saw 81% market disruption of a new technology. This is what we're talking about when we think about disruptive innovation. And this was despite some remarkable challenges. We had to build entire new industries. We had to build a process in business called the assembly line. We had to learn how to fix and maintain these remarkably complicated vehicles. We also had to fight World War I. And in 13 years, you saw a complete transformation of a market. This is easily explained with a very simple graph up here, known as the S-curve of technology adoption. And typically, you can see there's a disruptive new technology and there's an incumbent technology. And on the x-axis, it's time. Right? Typically, disruptive technologies would take 10 to 20 years before they'd eclipse the market. And that's what we just saw with the automobile in New York City. But what is happening nowadays is the same thing. We're still getting disrupted, but the pace of change is almost uncomfortable. This is from BlackRock, the largest financial institution in the world. They manage over $6 trillion in assets. And this shows the S-curves of technology adoption over the last 100 years. Right? The S's are turning into straight lines, straight up and down. So the pace at which we're seeing innovation is almost mind-blowing. And how I want to make that real is actually tell a couple stories of some of the entrepreneurs who took stage here last year at our first annual World Forum for the Unreasonable Impact Partnership. This is Xavier. Xavier is the founder of a company called Off-Grid Electric. The problem that he told us about, that he's trying to solve, is that 3 out of 4 individuals on the African continent today don't have access to electricity. There's 1.3 billion people worldwide today who do not have access to electricity. And when you don't have access to electricity and you want to study at night, like the girls behind me in this photo, you typically are using a kerosene lantern. If you have a kerosene lantern in your household, that's the equivalent of every man, woman, and child in that household smoking 2 packs of cigarettes every single day. It's a huge amount of your income that you're spending on this. So Xavier started a company called Off-Grid Electric. He told us all about it, and he showed us this exact graph. He said in 2012, we launched our pilot in Tanzania. And each yellow dot that shows up on the screen behind me, this is a house that they shifted from kerosene to solar. And you'll see how quickly this innovation took place. And this is back in 2012, and it started to spread across the continent. So the question is, today, a year later, what has changed for Off-Grid Electric? Today, they are one of the fastest growing distributed solar companies on the planet. And this past year in January, they raised the largest round of venture capital for a distributed solar company in the developing world, focused on home installation. You're actually going to hear about another one focused on commercial installation. Another one of the entrepreneurs who took stage last year is Ron. His company is called Regenerative. And what he told us about was a problem that is a silent killer. We're going to actually hear about it from one of our fellows today as well. There are literally, estimated by the World Health Organization, 3 million people a year who die from outdoor air pollution. Ambient outdoor air pollution. And Ron launched a company called Regenerative. It's the largest database in the world of real-time air quality indicators on the planet. I actually just did this a couple hours ago. This is where we are right now. The air quality is a 64. It's not that good. It's not that bad at the Royal Institution, but it's not necessarily that great. You can see it's forecasted in real time. It's down to 10 square meters accuracy everywhere on the planet. He told us last year that he'd integrated this with Dyson. So now Dyson air quality machines, they know what to filter out in real time in your home. What's the difference between last year and this year? He partnered with one of the largest companies in the world, Google. If you were to type into Google air quality in London, right now it will pull up Barometer's data for everybody on the planet. And if you have a Google Home, you can ask it what's the air quality outside, and it will tell you. And just a shameless plug for Barometer, you can download their app on the App Store. It has a 4.8 star out of 5-star rating. It's incredible, so you can know everywhere you go in your pocket what the air quality is, where you are at real time. The last fellow I'll introduce you to who took the stage last year was Jennifer from LanzaTech. Jennifer, she looks at this, and instead of seeing pollution, she sees an asset. Her company, LanzaTech, captures the emissions at the source. So this is what she introduced us to last year, her pilot with a steel mill in China. You can see here there's a smoke flute. And instead of emissions coming out of it, it's actually getting piped into a tank. And that tank is a fermentation tank. In essence, what we do to ferment beer, right, which is we will use sugars, water, and bacteria. She ferments pollution. She uses carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. She's bioengineered a bacteria, her and her team, to then ferment that into ethanol, which she told us last year could be converted into jet fuel. So what's the difference between now and last year? One is her pilot project got a lot bigger. This is the plant that she took online this year. This plant in China, same steel mill, is the equivalent of taking 88,000 cars off the road every single year. It has a payback period of less than 3 years. And she told us on stage last year that she thought they would fly a commercial airliner powered on jet fuel made of pollution within the year. And literally yesterday, Virgin Atlantic This is from yesterday. It's not 33 minutes ago. It's like 20 hours ago. But Richard Branson tweeted out, maiden voyage, the first ever commercial airliner flown on jet fuel made out of pollution. The reason I bring all this up is the stories, the companies, the technologies you're going to hear about today, they are real. And when they tell you about the pace of innovation and the pace of disruption that they're going to bring to the markets, that they're going to bring to industry, that they're going to bring to society, it is real. So we have a front row seat to understand what the future is going to look like, but the future is closer than we think. Now, what's the downside of this disruption? Where does it go wrong? This report says it very clearly. Oxford has cited that by 2035, almost 50% of jobs that exist today will not exist. That is the founding intention of this partnership. It is to scale up sustainable companies that are, yes, good for the economy, but they're also rapidly creating the jobs of tomorrow. Every entrepreneur that you will meet today, we believe, is on a logical line and trajectory to create at least 500 jobs in the next 5 years, and to do so with sustainability at the heart of their profit model. We believe desperately in entrepreneurs in this partnership because we know that entrepreneurs are the job creators of tomorrow. This is evidence with the past 2 years of the partnership. We've worked with 71 companies. They've raised over $1 billion in financing. They've generated over $1 billion in revenue. The most important two statistics I would say that are up here is over 100 million individuals worldwide are impacted by their technologies in a positive way. They're supporting 18,000 jobs. And in the last 2 years, they've created net new jobs, over 6,700 jobs. We believe these entrepreneurs are the titans of industry of tomorrow. But tomorrow is not 10 years away. Tomorrow could be today. Tomorrow could be a year away. I think in closing, what I'd like to do is acknowledge that this partnership is about standing on the shoulders of giants. And the giants are the fellows and the entrepreneurs. The giants are the mentors and the specialists and the funders and investors who support them on the journey. The giants are the team behind the scenes who organize this entire experience and ensure that it feels and is a flawless experience for all of us. And the giants are our co-founders and co-creators at Barclays. We are beyond grateful to everybody who has made this partnership a reality. And today, we're going to live this value of we is greater than I. A steadfast belief that if we're going to have a chance at bending history in the right direction, that we have to be pathologically collaborative. And it's not just Barclays, and it's not just the investors, and it's not just the mentors, and not just our team. It's every single person in this room today. We're going to join these entrepreneurs on their journey. With that, I have the distinct privilege of passing the baton over to Joe McGrath, who is joining us on a very busy day. They're actually launching a new arm of the bank. He has a new board of directors. He rearranged all of his meetings to join us. He's the global head of banking for Barclays. It is a true privilege to welcome out as a friend, as partner, as a collaborator. Joe?
Daniel, thanks. Daniel, thank you very much, and thank you so much for your partnership. It's been great working with you for the past couple of years. And welcome, everybody. What a great afternoon. As Daniel mentioned, my name is Joe McGrath, and I've got the great privilege of running the global banking business at Barclays. Hopefully not one of those jobs that's obsolete by 2035. But it's great to be here this afternoon, and it's great to be at our second Unreasonable Impact World Forum. And it really is the culmination of the second fantastic year of this partnership, which, by the way, we've just renewed for 4 years, which Barclays is incredibly excited about. And so to date, we've worked with somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 companies that have gone through the Unreasonable Impact program. And it's been a fantastic experience for those of us at Barclays and all the colleagues that have gotten to touch those entrepreneurs. And they really go through an extensive selection process and then a nurturing and support phase with all the people around the Unreasonable Impact program. And you'll have the privilege today of actually getting to hear from, see, and hopefully meet the entrepreneurs that we're unbelievably excited about that are in our next cohort. So why is Barclays involved with Unreasonable? I mean, if you think about it from a broad perspective, what we do with our clients every day is try to help them facilitate building scale and growing. And we do that around the globe, in many cases with very mature companies. You will have noticed last week, did a very large cross-border deal selling Sky here in the UK to Comcast in the US. Very large transaction for us, very important transaction for us. But our partnership with Unreasonable brings something special to both the bank and our people. We're able to work with companies that are scaling and indeed trying to address some real serious problems around the globe. So whether that's the development of new clean energy sources, the development of agricultural and food solutions, water solutions, et cetera, these are complex problems that need to be addressed, and helping those companies scale in the way we are is truly impactful for those of us at the firm. In addition to working with those companies to help them meet their commercial and social aspirations, we get the benefit of watching those companies create jobs. And one of the facts that I'm amazed by is since we started this program, the Unreasonable Impact companies have actually generated 7,000 jobs globally and have touched over 100 million customers. Pretty amazing when you think about that. Yeah. And I dare say, I think we've only just begun. We're very excited about what we're going to be able to do in the future with this program. That demonstrated by the fact that we've renewed for that 4-year period. And we're really, really pumped about what we're going to be able to do from a colleague perspective in terms of helping these companies grow and really having us meet our social and commercial goals at Barclays, but creating an environment where our customers, our clients, our colleagues, and society in general benefit. So we're very excited about that. Today, colleagues of mine that are in the innovation, scale up, and impact investing area have a kiosk out there. I welcome you to go by, say hello, ask questions, give them a hug if they're lonely, but swing by there today. That would be great. And then finally, and just to wrap, as we think about going forward, we're very excited to be working with the cohort that you'll meet and be able to see today. We're very excited to continue to push this program forward. And I'd like to show you a short video before we turn it back to Daniel that'll really give you a feel for the journey that we've been on in Unreasonable Impact. And I hope you join us on that journey as you watch the clip. Thank you very much.
Unreasonable Impact is a global movement designed around empowering the world's most sustainable, fast-growing entrepreneurs with the resources and the tools and the network that they need to create at least 500 jobs in the next 5 years. We have co-designed and co-created Unreasonable Impact with Barclays. We believe that if you get the right people into the same space for an extended period of time, that we will see unlikely, uncommon breakthroughs.
90% of all vaccines need to be kept cool, and without it you just simply destroy potency. What we did was come up with a solution that could cope with a power loss and keep vaccines cool for 10 to 14 days without power. We've patented a system that uses water that ensures you get perfect 4-degree cooling.
If we continue status quo as normal, we'll be in a 100 terawatt energy world mid-century. The only energy source that can support that load is solar energy. One of Designs makes the patented line of sole source solar-powered stoves, the most energy-efficient product in the solar category.
Almost everyone in the world would love to see meat come to the table without the entire process of suffering involved for animals, or the health risks associated with how these animals are raised, or the enormous environmental impact. Memphis Meats is growing delicious meat directly by raising animal cells instead of raising animals. At the end of it, you get meat that is the same as what you would get from an animal, except that we don't have to raise billions of animals.
Entrepreneurship is hard. They need as much support as they can possibly have. And so throughout the 2 weeks of this program, we're matching the entrepreneurs with specialists and mentors.
So the thing I'm trying to teach them is to be able to rapidly experiment and really work with reality as the medium of problem solving.
Any role that Barclays can have in helping to fuel that growth is critically important.
Where are the people that you're likely to be pitching the sales pitch to? What do they read?
When we're in one of these deep dives, the level of commitment is fantastic. Really thinking hard about the problem.
We'll be running what we're calling a brain trust gathering with about 80 senior employees at Barclays who all want to help these entrepreneurs solve their key challenges faster.
I'm particularly excited about the partnership that we've struck up with Unreasonable. It's been energizing for colleagues around the firm.
It's this sort of inspirational social impact that I'm so proud to be working here.
The second day, we'll be running a demo day designed to align these companies with key individuals who can support their growth.
I'm interested in a few of the companies because they're very commercially viable, but also having a strong social impact.
Entrepreneurs play a hugely important role in driving economic activity and in driving employment.
Next year, Virgin Atlantic will fly our fuel showing that recycled carbon can be used for aviation.
The passion, the drive, and the commitment of the entrepreneurs is truly inspirational and a great thing to be part of.
And if this community can really support each other into the long term, these people will bend history in the right direction.
Okay, so now the show begins. Now that you all understand exactly what this partnership is all about with that 3-minute video. Now, if you're still curious, the best way to actually understand Unreasonable Impact in this entire global initiative is to meet the entrepreneurs who we're supporting through it. So now we get the opportunity to do that. You may be wondering what the agenda looks like today. I'm not certain if that has been shared with you, so I'm going to go over it really quickly. You're going to have 2 intermissions. That's probably what you're most curious about. 20 minutes in each intermission. You get a chance to mix and mingle with each other, with the entrepreneurs. There's some technology I'm going to explain to you so that you can actually sign up to follow these companies and share your contact information with them. And then we're going to run through 26 talks. 26 talks. I know you're excited. Every talk is less than 4 minutes, about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, what I'm going to say up front is that to be an entrepreneur who takes stage here and to have 3 minutes and 30 seconds to share with you their life's work is almost an impossible task. And the way we're going to make it possible is you're all going to do something with me, which is sit on the edges of your seats. Literally, I want you to physically change your posture, sit on the edges of your seats. Every time I say something, I want you to agree with it, smile, nod your head. If I say something funny, you're going to laugh at it when the entrepreneurs come on stage. If they share with you a monumentous occasion, I want you to applaud, I want you to hoot, I want you to holler. We are here to support them. For some of them, English isn't even their first language. If you can imagine how hard that task is, the way we're going to get through this together, the way it's going to be fun, is we're all going to be a part of this journey with them as they take stage. So the first wave of entrepreneurs that we're going to look at, they're investigating the future of energy. I mentioned earlier that Off-Grid Electric had raised the largest venture capital round in financing in January in history for a distributed solar company in the developing world. And then we met Saif. And Saif, with his company Fourth Partner Energy, has broken that hurdle. Saif is an incredible individual who, when I first met him, the thing that stood out more than what he's doing in the world is his humility. So I think we have the rare distinction and privilege to hear from the man himself, the co-founder and CEO of Fourth Partner Energy. And let's give him a very loud, very rowdy, warm round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
All of us may have heard how polluted cities like Delhi can get, for that matter, any city in the developing world. At Fourth Partner Energy, we are trying to solve for this like nobody imagined could be possible even 5 years back. So how do we do this? We identify these large rooftops, which are essentially idle assets sitting on top of industrial or commercial clients, and we turn them into this: clean, productive, energy-generating assets. What is noteworthy here is that while doing this, we are delivering them at least 40 to 60% saving in the power cost without any subsidy, government subsidy, or upfront cost. This is directly into the bottom line. Today we are, thank you. Today we are one of the lowest cost clean energy producers in India, delivering energy at 6 cents, whereas the typical industrial client buys at over 10 cents in India. So we are delivering directly to the bottom line. Started in 2010, we are today one of the largest distributed solar companies in India, serving more than 60 clients. Some of them may be familiar to you. These are some of our clients. We are more than 200 strong, fourth partners, like we like to call all our stakeholders as fourth partners. They are a part of the journey. And our installations spread across the length and breadth of the country have eliminated carbon, which is equivalent to planting 7 million trees. So while doing good, we also make sure that we're doing well. We've been profitable from year one. and ever since, all the balance sheets. So yeah, not complaining about that. And having come this far, we still feel that we've just begun our journey. Our near-term goal is to take the installations 10x, and in the next 3 to 4 years, hit a target of 1 gigawatt. So that's our plan. Thank you.
I told you he is shockingly humble. Shockingly. So the next entrepreneur I've been welcomed to the stage is going to share with us a simple innovation. And sometimes the idea seems obvious, but we all have that idea, but we don't do something about it. This entrepreneur did something about it. Her name is Nina. She's visiting us from the United States. Her company is Lucid Energy. Let's give her a very warm round of applause and welcome.
10 years ago, Lucid Energy invented a brand new type of hydroelectric turbine designed to go into gravity-fed water pipes to make electricity. It's based on a vertical axis wind turbine, compressed like a basketball to fit in a water pipe. It's beautiful, it's elegant, it's simple. It's simple to install. After years of design and testing, they built a pilot facility in Portland, Oregon, with 4 turbines designed to make electricity to power about 150 homes. It ran for 18 months. The media loves it. And I think they love it because it's so easy to understand. One writer said, "It's forehead slapping obvious." An artist who's designing a water feature for a city center wants to install one in a plexiglass tube to showcase how simple it is to make electricity from gravity-fed water pipes. 700 independent media articles, thousands of inquiries from our website, worldwide. But what's the metric to commercialize it? And that was my job when they brought me in. My job was to make it into a commercial product, to take advantage of these opportunities. So I looked carefully at performance data. I looked at cost, market share, competitive advantage compared to other turbines, and risk. But at the end of the day, the product is to make energy, and the metric for energy is how much it costs to make a certain amount of energy over a year, dollars per kilowatt hour. And it has to be competitive. So I made one of the hardest decisions a leader can make. I conceded that this product, even after 9 years of development, wasn't ready for commercialization. I halted technology development as I revamp my ideas for Lucid Energy. But the Unreasonable Group has a saying. And our saying is, "We is greater than I." And I know that there's a market for in-pipe hydro, making electricity out of from gravity-fed water pipes. I know that with the right turbines and the right people, that we can chase these opportunities. The market is huge. We've seen that. It's forehead slapping obvious. If you wish to share in these opportunities, come and see me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina, for being so vulnerable and so open with us. When you are trying to disrupt a market with a new technology, it's hard. Right? So as a reminder, our job today in this audience is just to make it a little bit easier for these entrepreneurs to tell their stories. The next entrepreneur, actually hailing from the UK, from the neighborhood, is Ben Todd. He's going to tell us about his company, Arcola, and this one should be fun. Everybody, Ben.
Hello there. I'm going to talk to you about energy and transportation. So I need you to bear with me. I'm going to go on a little bit of a narrative arc. Hopefully, I'm going to bring it to a point. So let's start. 20 years I've been working in fuel cells and hydrogen. I'll get to that in a minute. But in those 20 years, what have we seen? Finally, renewables are scaling. Yeah, scale, proper, serious scale. You've heard from some of the guys here. But there's an increasing understanding of what engineers have known for a long time, which is the sun doesn't shine all the time. Yeah? The markets are starting to understand the need for storage, yeah? And the frustration with putting really amazing batteries in car parks. We've also finally realized that electric cars are really awesome. Finally. Why did it take so long? Yeah, I was talking to somebody only 3 years ago. When he was doing an investment round, they were like, don't mention those electric cars. People will think you're crazy. Yeah? And now they're like, don't mention those combustion things. People will think you're crazy. Yeah? So electric cars are awesome, but it's not quite perfect yet because the grid's got capacity limits. I think we've all started to understand. We also have another challenge, which batteries have a range and a payload limit. This is not range anxiety. This is not people overcoming their newness of a technology. These are fundamental limits of physics. So we keep burning. There are a whole range of transport applications where we're just going to keep burning stuff for quite a while. We all know the problems with that, because dirty air is killing people. So this isn't Beijing, this is London. I could show you a similar picture of Paris, New York, Los Angeles, take your pick. Yeah? So we've made this incredible progress, but we haven't made enough progress. So the question is, what do you do? So the first answer is everything. Yeah? All the good stuff. Invest in everybody. Yeah? But I'm going to talk to you about one specific thing, which is hydrogen and fuel cells. So you may have heard about it for a long time. The key thing of hydrogen is you can do storage, so grid, and you can do mobility. And so there's not only me that thinks this, the Hydrogen Council, there's a whole group of massive global corporates across the world growing very quickly to make this happen. You may also have heard some people saying, batteries also do that. Are batteries good or are fuel cells good? So just very quickly, they're both good. Yeah? On the left is a battery and on the right is a fuel cell. Yeah? To those of you who are familiar, you're like, they're more or less the same. I showed this to somebody like, no, they're not. Electrochemically, they're sister technologies. These are siblings. They would need to work together. So now, finally, I get to the point. I'll call it energy. So we are enabling zero-emission mobility for cities, regions, and countries using hydrogen fuel cells and batteries. Yeah? We're a small company, UK SME, founded in 2010, grown ever since. Strong links into the science base, so pulling through science. Very strong links into the global hydrogen fuel cell supply chain. We've got a reputation, despite our small size, for actually getting things done. We have got traction in the market, and we're ready to scale. So just very quickly, how do we work? The first, on the left then, the small text, is we actually find markets where it makes sense. There are a lot of things you can do with a fuel cell that make no sense. We don't do that. The second thing we do is we build industrial partnerships. I like exclusive partnerships by territory and by application, where we can make things happen and work together. That's the picture on the right. I won't explain it. Understand what the market is, understand what people want, find the right technology, put it into place. So what we provide, the bit that we can protect, the software, the control, the proprietary IP. We also then will supply the equipment and all of the engineering needed, and critically the route to market. How to actually apply this in a place where it makes sense, not on another unicorn project that doesn't go anywhere. What does it look like? A double-decker bus. Sometimes you can believe what's written on the side of a bus. Yeah? So, I wasn't actually planning to say that. I hope that wasn't too political. So on the side of this double-deck bus, it could say 200 plus miles of zero-emission range. Not just turn off while you go down Oxford Street and poison all the other people. 200 miles zero emissions. No loss of passengers. Yeah, and the reason we can do that is if you put batteries and fuel cells together, you get 3 times the energy density. So don't fight them, make them be friends. Yeah? And our particular bus, because we do rather good engineering, we get the best-in-class efficiency. So our double deck uses the same amount of hydrogen as a typical single deck. Yeah? So twice as many people, same amount of energy. So traction in the market. We've got a long-lasting relationship now that's moving forward really quickly. We're the largest double-deck bus manufacturer in the world, biggest bus company in the UK. We're just moving to trucks in 2019, just starting to build those relationships. We are in negotiations, hopefully I'll be able to tell you soon, on the new UK hydrogen train. And we're building collaboration now with the largest Scottish shipyard. So those are the markets, buses and trucks, trains and ships. Big stuff where it actually makes a real impact. And I did a tiny bit of consulting for a Formula 1 team, just to depress me, really, about how much resource goes into a slightly pointless sport. They have so many toys. I'll stop, sorry. So in terms of the addressable market, there's about 500,000 buses expected by mid-2020s. There's about 5 million, 10 million trucks. It's an enormous market. If we can just do 10,000 vehicles, it's a $1 billion business. That'll do me fine for a week, and then we'll keep growing. So my question is very simple. At this stage, I'm not looking for investment, so I don't even have to be told not to ask you. But I really would like your help. So customers. I want to find who are the really amazing customers I should work with in every country of the world, in every sector. So buses and trucks, heavy vehicles particularly, shipping and trains later, but also around market creation. Like, these technologies are not that easy to bring in. Yeah? You can't just displace diesel easily. Diesel's really cheap, it just happens to be evil. Yeah? So help in cities and regions, people who want to make things happen. So please do come find me. I'd love to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Ben, that was awesome. You took an incredibly complicated business model and made it simple, made it digestible, made us understand the landscape of renewable energy. The next entrepreneur is going to address the second half of that landscape, which is once we have all these batteries, we put them to work. What do we do with them? Right, what do we do with them when they reach the end of their life? That entrepreneur who's going to take us there, his name's Amrit. His company is Acceleron. Let's give him a loud, rowdy round of applause.
Hi everyone, my name is Amrit and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Acceleron. We're all about building better lithium batteries. So I want you to picture yourself driving down the motorway. Something goes wrong with your car. You don't scrap the vehicle, you actually get it repaired. We don't do this with batteries though. Batteries are made up of many subcomponents, and it's oftentimes just a few of these components which go wrong. So this is where Acceleron comes in. We've developed the technology to reimagine the way the lithium battery should be put together. Using a compression-based approach, we're able to take apart our lithium battery, swap out the components that need swapping out, and keep it in service for longer. So having this circular model allows us to really capitalize and realize the value of every component of this lithium battery pack. Furthermore, we've been developing the intelligence so that our battery lasts as long as a solar panel system or any other technology that it's paired with. Our batteries are designed and built for purpose, which means that we're able to offer a battery for life. The market is growing massively. Over the next 12 years, it's expected to increase by over 1,000%. This is huge. And so we want to work with companies that want to rethink how they use lithium batteries, and we make money in 3 key ways. We sell the battery up front. We offer service plans and upgrade plans alongside that, so we can keep that battery in service for as long as it's needed. And we also offer insights into the data, really bringing that intelligence into the lithium battery space. There's 2 key segments that are really growing and need attention badly. There's the solar space. We want to power homes, and we are powering homes now in the Caribbean. We're also powering appliances and agriculture in East Africa as well. So there's a huge growing demand for off-grid solar, and we're helping to realize that demand. In addition, there's the transportation sector. So we're providing batteries now for quad bikes, for watercraft, and a whole range of other motive applications. When it comes to the cost comparison with existing technology, we're actually pricing our batteries on the higher end because we've got some really great features that really deserve a higher price. But overall, because we have this serviceable model and we can help our customers to realize the residual value in their batteries, we're able to offer a lower total cost of ownership. Since we were established 2 years ago, we've managed to achieve quite a few things, thanks to all of the different partnerships and our amazing team within Acceleron. So now we have a battery that's certified. We have expanding EV capability, so we're working more and more with OEMs that are interested in how we can take their batteries and find new uses for them. We have a patent granted in the UK on our compression-based technology, and it's actually going through the world courts at the minute. We have really great links with the Shell Foundation as well, who are just amongst the best partners that we could ever have asked for. And for us, the key thing is, in the last year, since January, we've managed to generate over £500,000 from a standing start in both revenue and purchase orders. And we can manufacture these batteries anywhere. We're not capacity constrained, so we've got access to world-class automotive manufacturing that's helping us to bring these batteries to all these different markets. So I'd like to leave you with this thought. The energy landscape is shifting. Lithium is the way forward, and Acceleron will be the foundation of that. If you have access to anyone that would like a different type of lithium solution, or can help us to expand our capabilities in the world of batteries, then please do come and find me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amrit. As you closed and mentioned, the energy landscape is shifting. We've heard about solar, we've heard about turbines, we looked at hydrogen cell-powered vehicles, we looked at lithium-ion batteries. But we're missing a couple key components of the future of energy. And the next entrepreneur, James Highgate with green fuels, not grain fuels, although it could be made from grains, is going to tell us about a revolution in biodiesel that him and his team are leading. Everybody, James.
Great, well, thank you for the introduction. So Green Fuels is a company I actually started back in 2003, really off the back of discovering that you convert waste into fuel. I thought, whoa, that's cool. So I did the only natural thing was max out my Barclays card with tanks and pumps, and I built a small refinery in my parents' garage. Turns out that I wasn't the only one who was interested in that, and we ended up selling quite a lot in the first few years of the business, and so we managed to grow as a profitable business in year one, debt-free, and managed to sustain the business without ever getting any outside investment so far. So that was 15 years ago. So we stayed committed to our roots. We like the idea of small, decentralized production from waste. So our technology improved and moved from plastic tanks and heaters into nice, shiny fuel breweries like the one on the screen. And but during this time, we were in quite an early stage, so we did a lot of cool world first. So we did the very first 100% biofuel powered racing car. So in here, running on waste drive fuel. We did the first train, which happened to be the Royal Train, which was very cool. Got to travel on it a couple of times. The fuel for the very first jet, which flew low and fast over the desert 11 years ago. But you know, this is a big deal because liquid biofuels. This is the direction it's likely to move to. So we got in on the ground floor. We also do other things. We work with Aston Martin to modify a classic car to run on a waste-derived biofuel produced from waste wine and cheese, of all things, which was famously used in a wedding a few years ago. And was one of the reasons we ended up with a royal warrant back in 2013, and something we're super proud of. So the technology, it's perfect for a small, decentralized scale, localized waste collection. So this is barley, perfect for islands. Waste is collected on the island, goes to the refinery, gets turned into fuel that's used in bus fleets. It's actually used on the school buses on the island, and also in decentralized energy production. The driver here was health. The waste was actually going back into the food chain, which is causing a lot of health issues. Now there's value in turning it into fuel. Cities, so here's London, you probably all recognise it, but what you may not know is PwC's buildings here run on a waste-derived biofuel. They're heating, cooling and power, which is giving incredibly high BREEAM ratings, I think the highest in the world at the time. Also closed-loop recycling projects, so where you've got someone who's got a load of waste, they can convert it into fuel and use it in their trucks, such as McDonald's here. So, great opportunity, and that's where we've been. We've been a technology supplier, and we've now sold into 80-plus countries across the world. And our customers are producing 420 million, or they've got the capacity to produce 420 million litres of fuel every year. Cumulatively, that's led to a carbon saving of around 5 million tonnes. And to put that into perspective, we started the same year as Tesla, and that's a bigger overall carbon saving for our customers than even Tesla. So we're super... pretty damn cool. So Yeah, so, but the business is now developing. We've decided that we're going to branch out into our own sort of production. So we're setting up facilities actually in Latin America where we're going to be collecting oil and converting it into fuel for use and eventually for aviation. We're also scaling up our renewable jet process. We were lucky enough to get a very large EU grant last year, which has allowed us to scale up our technology in Germany, and we're on offtake from one of the major airlines, and this is, I see this as the future of biofuels. And we're also developing a platform. As I mentioned, 5 million tons of carbon, that's a lot. But there's no value being gained from that at the moment. So we're developing a platform so our customers and ourselves can gain revenue through that. So if any of you want to come and talk to me about it, I've got my phone number and email on there. So feel free to contact me as you want, or come and find me at the bar later. Thank you.
Awesome job, man. Thank you, James. And the next individual is one of the most unreasonable individuals that I know. As a longtime friend, as an incredible serial entrepreneur, just like actually James Rhodes, he didn't mention this in his personal story. He was an executive at an investment bank, not Barclays. I won't mention the name. It was a second-tier investment bank, we'll say. And the next entrepreneur, Manoj, was also an investment banker turned aggressive serial entrepreneur out to transform waste into energy from his home country, India. Let's welcome Manoj, who's hailing now from Colorado, our home state. Manoj.
Hello, everyone. I grew up in a state in India called Bihar. It has 110 million people, and 70 million of them do not have access to power. There are 2.5 billion people like that around the world who do not have access to any power, or they have access to very unreliable power. And they spend $70 billion annually on candles, kerosene, and diesel. So having been trained as an electrical engineer and actually grew up in darkness, I was left with no choice but to found Husk Power Systems. So what we do is we design, build, and operate mini power plants that are 50 kilowatt in size. We run a distribution network for up to 2 kilometers or 1.5 miles and connect about 300 customers, households, small businesses, and so on and so forth. We founded this company in India in 2008, and we are also operational in Tanzania now. What we are really proud about this is we have been able to mix a lot of technology that enables us to deliver power at a very affordable price point. So we use solar PV, as you all know, for daytime supply, and we combine biomass gasification system that uses rice husk, obviously the name, as a feedstock to generate power during the evening time that enables us to cut the battery size by 60% and therefore lower cost. What we are really proud about here is we are using 100% renewable power to deliver electricity in the rural areas of India and East Africa. And each of these 50 kilowatt sites that I talked about actually creates 4 local jobs from that village, and it eliminates 500 tons of CO2 per year. We take our customers very seriously, like I guess everybody else does, but we are very customer centric. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you are a commercial customer, we are going to provide you with, say, a 35% discount. It's all algorithm determined through a smart prepaid meter system if you were using that power between, say, noon and 4 p.m. So it's a win-win-win situation for everyone, and here is how. We are passing on the cost benefit to the customer, therefore he or she is generating more net profit. We are actually increasing the capacity utilization significantly because residential users do not use between noon and, say, 4 p.m. So this is how we are able to manage each customer in a very customized fashion. We do keep ourselves honest by measuring Net Promoter Score, so I'm not just lying here. And we have done quite well in terms of increasing customer satisfaction year over year. So meet one of our customers, Mr. Ram Kumar. He used to run a diesel genset and was barely making his ends meet. But now he has connected with us for 2 years now, and his sales increased by 4 times because now he has access to 24/7 power at an affordable price point, and he's using that to buy things like freezers and sell perishable products. A third-party survey indicates that we eliminated 100% kerosene from every single village that we have served, and that is quite an achievement. Thank you. Another interesting fact that we came to know is parents reported 100% children actually are doing homework. I don't believe that. I honestly feel they're playing video games. We have been very fortunate and have raised Series C round of financing recently with the likes of Shell, NG, and Swedfund, and we have a very aggressive growth target. We are going to install one site or one new site every other day and reach 500 plus sites in India and East Africa over the next 4 to 5 years. And while doing so, we will create 2,000 plus jobs in the rural areas in India and Africa. So, thank you. So I would like to invite you all to enable us to accomplish the target that I mentioned and help us reach out to 10 million people around the world over the next 10 years. Thank you.
So that was the first wave of entrepreneurs. You just heard from 7 entrepreneurs, 7 founders, 7 companies. We have 5 more to go, and then we have a 20-minute intermission. The next section of today's event is going to go from the future of energy to the future of food. Future of food, agriculture, and farming. The first entrepreneur who's going to take us there may be a little bit jet-lagged. He just flew a red-eye from New York to London this morning and showed up here because he wanted to take stage and he wanted to share his work with you all, and he wants to get to know all of you. We're going to have to give him a very loud welcome when he does come out here just to wake him up. But David from Arrow Farms is running the largest vertical farm on the planet. An incredible entrepreneur, a friend, an amazing individual, humble as they come, and onto something that is truly remarkable. Let's welcome David. Let's get loud, let's get rowdy as he takes the stage.
Hi, everybody. So at Arrow Farms, our mission is to build farms in cities all over the world so everyone has access to fresh, great tasting, safe food 365 days a year. We also aim to take an understanding of plant biology to new heights so we could solve more and more problems in the agriculture supply chain. And what I mean by that is, to date, Arrow Farms has grown about 500 different varieties of plants. It doesn't mean that, and while we think we could grow anything, it doesn't mean we grow everything. And we have a lens of what makes economic sense and where we could add value to society. I'll also share, we've raised about 100 million to date, and I'll call out, we have 2 British investors since we're here in London. One is Grosvenor Estates, a group called Wheat Sheaf out of Grosvenor, and another is ADM, that's an agriculture investing group. Our aim is to continue to lower CapEx, lower OpEx, improve quality, so more and more varieties of products could be brought to customers year-round. To do that, we get very functionally deep. So we have extra expertise, and we develop more and more expertise in the mechanical design. Think of lights, frames, pumps coming in together. We have structural engineers, electrical, mechanical, PLC, process industrial systems, all these engineers working to drive costs down. Then we work on the biology. We have plant biologists, physiologists, pathologists, molecular biologists, microbiologists. Then we work on the genetics. Then we also work on the operations. We have about 200 SOPs, all how do we improve quality, lower costs. And we also work on the systems design, the data analytics as well. We're as much a data science company as anything else. And the data science allows us to course correct in how we grow. My biggest surprise in this journey is we're not only growing plants, but we're growing them at a higher degree of quality. As we scaled up, we realized one wants to scale up, improve yield, which relates to cost of goods sold, but also improve quality. And the two don't always go hand in hand, especially scaling biological systems. There are non-intuitive challenges. We've built 9 farms to date. We built ones the size of this floor, one the size of this room, one the size of this building, et cetera, and the problems we've had to solve and overcome were very different at different levels of scale. And again, the challenge keeping quality as well as cost. To lower costs, we've also realized we need to improve automation, so we have automation in seeding, harvesting, cleaning, packaging. The first slide showed our 4th iteration of design. Now we're working on our 5th that has automation between all these components. That, of course, lowers the labor component of cost of goods sold. Also, it could impact quality as well. We also put partnerships together with various stakeholders that could improve and get us to our goals faster. So here, Dell, for example, they have Pivotal, VMware, EMC, and of course their hardware component, and they help us accelerate the data analytics, the systems design. We have thousands of sensors everywhere, how we take the data and how it makes us better farmers. And here it's changing the algorithm in which each variety grows. We grow plants to improve taste, texture, nutritional density, shelf life, color, et cetera, et cetera. I'll leave you with an image of the kids. So here, well, actually, I'll leave you with my contact info. But the kids is important. We realize. We'll go back to the kids. No. We put a farm in an inner city school in Newark to get the kids to have better eating habits. And after operating there a few years, Michelle Obama came to visit it. We got the kids eating leafy greens instead of fries. And that's something we're also, part of our mission is to develop better eating habits. So anyway, with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. The efficiency is crazy. It's 390 times the efficiency in their vertical farm versus regular farming. That means for every 1 acre of their farm, it's producing the equivalent of 390 acres of how we normally go about agriculture. So certainly the future of food. And the future farmer, jobs are changing. Right? The future farmer could be a data scientist. So with that, we're going to go from food to water. And I promise you, you may not believe the next entrepreneur. And I'm going to ask you to suspend disbelief because this is real. This entrepreneur is certainly paving the road for the future of water, how it is produced, how we access it, and how we ensure that it is prolific around the world. Let's give Johnny from China a very loud, warm round of applause.
According to UN projection, in 2025, less than 7 years from now, 5.3 billion people will face surf water scarcity, and 1.8 billion people will face absolute water scarcity. So our mission is to, wherever there's air, there will be healthy drinking water. It's a revolutionary technology that can extract water directly from air effectively with very minimal power consumption. It was referred by the China Central TV as the 5th invention in China, as well as the 5th revolution of drinking water. How it works? For every year, there are more than 500,000 cubic kilometers of water vaporized in the air. But unfortunately, we can use only 1% of those. What we are doing is trying to get to use those 99% unused water from the air. We have filed more than 100 intellectual patents on this technology. We basically cover all kinds of implementation you think of. It's a multi-scale solution that can generate 12 to 33 liters of water per day for the home appliance version, and the large-scale version generates 60 to 5,000 liters per day, and it can stack up for water plants. It's also a multi-purpose solutions that can be used at home, office, military, water plant, retail services, bottled water, solids planting, smart building, and all those covered by our patents. It's also an ideal solution for desert. Egypt, one of the most driest countries in the world, you can see the average annual humidity is up to 56%. Although water vaporizes in the daytime because of high temperature, but in the evening when temperature drops, the relative humidity is up to 80 to 90%. Cape Town, the world's first major city that facing counting down for zero water reserve. It's extremely humid, and atmospheric water generation will be the ideal solution to that. Although we are a 3-year company, we have won more than 50 international and national awards, including three awards from the Midland World Expo, as well as awards from the UN Industry Development Organization. And we are the official partner and steering committee member of a number of UN committees which is on water and environment. In fact, we are highly profitable. Last year, we got $5 million US of revenue, but 2.2 million net profit. Highly profitable. And we are looking for 20 times at least of this figure and be main board listing in 2 years. We'd like to have you to be our partners so that we can work together to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Atmospheric water generation. The company's only 3 years old. When I first met Johnny, they had filed 100 patents. I asked him, how real is this? And he said, come over to my apartment. I said, what do you mean? They have one of these in their living room. It produces about 30 liters of water a day off the humidity in their apartment, and then it controls the humidity level perfectly in their apartment. So we may all have one of these, just like the automobile in 1913. I think this might be in everybody's apartment everywhere in the world soon enough. Anybody here a vegetarian? I'm just curious. Okay, not a ton of vegetarians. The vegetarians in this room are going to love the next entrepreneur, though. Arturo is going to tell us, give us a little bit of a glimpse of where protein fabrication is going to be in the very near future with his company, Clara Foods. Let's give Arturo a very warm round of applause.
Thank you, Daniel. Hi, everyone. I'm Arturo from Clara Foods, and we make real animal protein without ever using a single animal. We brew it using yeast and sugar. And as crazy as it sounds, this technology has been around for decades, since the 1980s, to make real animal protein without using animals. When pharma companies developed it to make insulin, life-saving proteins. You see, insulin prior to the 1980s could only be found in pig pancreases. And so in order to make it, you had to kill a pig, extract the insulin protein from their pancreas, purify it, and then inject it into people. And that's how every diabetic got their insulin protein from. You needed over 51,000 pigs to make 1 kilo of insulin. Fast forward to today, it's virtually all made using fermentation. The cheese industry was no less barbaric. Prior to the 1990s, cheese was not vegetarian because the magical protein used to curdle the milk to make cheese could only be found in the 4th stomach of baby cows to produce industrially. You have to kill the baby cow, extract the rendered protein from their 4th stomach, and then throw that in milk to actually make cheese. Fast forward to today, and virtually all cheese, over around 80% of cheese worldwide, is made using fermentation. And so at Clara, we thought, well, we replaced the pig for insulin protein production, replaced the baby cow for rennet protein production. Can we replace the chicken for egg protein production? And can we replace animals more broadly from the protein production system? And over the past 4 years, we've been doing exactly that. We've raised $20 million in venture capital financing to fund our research. And I'm excited to share that by this time next year, we will be launching the world's first chickenless egg protein. At scale, this protein will be lower cost, use at least 80% less water and land, and have a reliable supply chain unimaginable in the animal products market. We're working to secure a lead investor to fuel our growth for the next few years and allow us to get one step closer to converting the factory farms and slaughterhouses of today into the breweries of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Arturo. And following Arturo, we're going to have the next entrepreneur take the stage. I remember, so in our programs, we do what we call as a fireside chat with all of the entrepreneurs. It's a way to really get to know them and their past stories, not just the presentations and pitches. I remember when I was getting to know Karn, his backstory is quite impressive. He's not just a serial entrepreneur. He wasn't just a former investment banker. He was also one of the youngest members of parliament in Canada's history. He hails from Vancouver, which is actually where I was born. He's a very good friend, a remarkable individual, a kooky genius entrepreneur. Let's all welcome Karn to the stage with Terramera.
Thanks, Daniel. So imagine a world where we grow enough food for everyone in a way that's clean, sustainable, using regenerative, renewable materials instead of the chemical pesticides and synthetic fertilizers we use today. We can. So Terramera was founded on one big, bold idea: to use technology for a purpose, so that we can create a world with affordable, clean food for everyone. How can we do that? Oh, I just turned my screen off. We can do that by not watching the screens. We can do that. So what we started with is trying to understand how plants and organisms and trees evolved over tens of millions of years, some of the most sophisticated methods of being able to protect themselves and thrive in some of the most difficult conditions, and how we can use and apply that so that we can make agriculture more efficient and more sustainable using renewable materials. Well, one of the problems with many of the natural materials that have been studied and are used in organic farming is the lack of efficiency and the lack of performance of many of these materials. Now, that's true of the synthetic products that we're putting in for pest control and disease control and fertilization, but it's even more important and even more of an issue with natural materials. In fact, between 50 to 90% of everything that we put onto a farm doesn't get taken up to and used where it needs to be used. So we're putting on multiple times how much we need to use on a farm, and most of it is washing away into the soil and into our water systems. So why is that happens? So let me have you picture this as an example. Imagine that you had a headache, and like a plant, you didn't have a mouth, so you had to stand in a shower of aspirin water to soak up enough aspirin to be able to get rid of that headache. Now, I know it's a ridiculous idea, but imagine you were in that shower. How long would you have to stand until you soaked up enough to get rid of that headache? Eventually you would, but it would take a long time. And if you imagine where most of that aspirin is going, it would be washing over your body and down the drain, along with all the aspirin that's dissolved in that water. And that's what we do in agriculture today. We spray and we pray that enough of the right material gets to the right place. But it doesn't. So we started deconstructing how we can make that process work better. And we looked to nature and we looked to other industries like pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. And we created a technology we call Actigate Targeted Performance Technology. And what it does is it allows the materials that we use today to be absorbed up much more efficiently by targeting the right kind of cells. So if we want to get materials increase their uptake into plants, we target plants. If we want to target a disease, we target the disease cells. And we can increase the amount of absorption into those cells in a targeted way so we can use less of the material and it performs at a much better level. So on the left is that shower, on the right is, on the right? Yeah, on the right, is the same product using our Actigate technology. So how this looks on a farm is on the far left, that's what it would look like if we didn't use pest control. Farmers would be spending their whole year growing food, and most of it would rot on the farm, would be left and not be able to be consumed. In the middle is how we grow food today. Much better, a lower percentage of loss, but what you see is, what you don't know here is these are all red grapes from the same field, taken on the same day. And in the middle is how we normally treat food. And just like if we get sick, say with cancer, chemotherapy has an effect on our bodies. And these materials also have an effect on plants. So it changes the way that plant grows. On the right, we can increase the health of the plant, decrease the loss, and actually increase the yield with our Actigate technology. So our goal over the next 10 years is to apply this technology to reduce the amount of synthetic chemicals we're using in agriculture by 80%, increase the yields across the globe by 20%, and positively affect the lives of 1 billion people. That's about how many don't have enough food to eat today. We can do that. We've actually launched our first product last year, 2 years ahead of schedule, and we're looking to scale this over the next 10 years across the planet. Soon, we'll live in a time where organic food isn't the alternative, but actually the norm, where we can actually produce clean organic food more cheaply, more efficiently than how we grow today. So that we can live in a world where we can grow enough food for everyone in a way that sustains our environment, our health, and our planet for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Karn. What Karn didn't mention, I'm going to embarrass him a little bit, but his first round of financing was 17 times oversubscribed. If you want to join him on the journey, you can find him here. The next entrepreneur is the last entrepreneur before intermission. So I'm actually going to ask you once more to physically change your posture. Sit on the edges of your seats. This is the last time before intermission, I promise. We're going to welcome Solveiga from Mimica to take us home on the theme of the future of food and food preservation. Everybody, Solveiga.
Most people don't think about where their food comes from. And behind the scenes, there's a huge and complex system at work, making sure that our food gets delivered to us in a safe and delicious way. And it works really well. And yet, there's still waste. And the reason for this is expiry dates. Retailers know that this bottle of milk can last at least till the 16th of October. But because of potential problems that could occur in the supply chain or even in our homes, they build in this 2-day buffer time just to account for these problems. But usually these problems don't happen, and for retailers, on each bottle of milk, they are losing 2 potential selling days, and that generates a lot of waste for them in store. And retailers work at such a tight margin that if only you reduce their waste by 0.5 percentage point, you can really increase their bottom line. And so if there was a way for food producers to say with certainty that their food was still fresh, they could extend the shelf life to the expected date that that food should last, rather than continuing to use the wasteful worst-case scenario date that they are today. So at Mimica, we've worked to solve this problem by creating a label that tells you exactly when food spoils, and it's called Mimica Touch. Using chemistry and smart design, Mimica has created a label that helps retailers extend their shelf life because we give them the real-time information. It's activated as soon as it is applied on the package, and it's calibrated to that specific food. It adjusts the conditions along the way, taking things like temperature into account, and it's accurate to 1 hour. It's been designed to be really intuitive to use with our tactile interface. So if the label feels smooth, that means your food is still fresh, and only when you feel bumps, that's when the food has spoiled. It's been designed to be inclusive to people with visual and cognitive impairments. And that's actually where this all came from. I started by looking at the problem of visually impaired people not being able to use printed expiry dates, but very quickly realized that we're all kind of blind to when our food goes off. And that's why we're wasting so much. And so what started out as a passion project, market demand grew, and it turned into a really exciting opportunity. We started winning awards. Our first 2 years was completely grant funded, and retailers and food producers have been getting in touch with us since day one. And we're currently actually running a pilot with Arla, the biggest dairy company in Europe, on their milk. The reason why Arla are really interested in working with us is because we help first reinforce their brand they've built around innovation and freshness, but more importantly, we help them improve their bottom line by reducing their waste, which currently is about 4 pence per bottle, and we're selling them labels at around the 1 penny mark, so it makes a lot of sense. And milk is just our proof of point area, and we're going to be selling these, we're going to be launching to the fresh protein space. And just in our first 4 target areas combined, we have an opportunity to sell up to 74 billion units just in Europe, which is pretty cool. So we have such a huge opportunity here. Anything that perishes can benefit from the Mimica technology. So that's all food, things like cosmetics, and even pharmaceuticals. We have a lot of work to do here, and we're going to do it with the best team on the market. At Mimica, we uniquely combine in our research and development team food scientists working alongside designers, and there's a couple of those in the picture here. And we also brought on industry experts to drive this vision forward. At Mimica, we are redefining the standard for food expiry labeling, and we're really excited to get going and launch this onto the market for the first time. And so I'm asking for your help. So if you know anyone who's interested in reducing waste in their businesses, to get in touch with me. And if you're just curious to see how the label works, you can come speak to me as well. Thank you so much.
All right, so that was the first half of today's session. You just heard from 12 companies, 12 entrepreneurs transforming the future landscape and the current landscape of how we think about energy and how we think about food. And now we're going to step into intermission. I was checking the schedule. We are a little bit behind, so instead of a 20-minute intermission, we're going to get a 15-minute intermission, but we'll be right back on time. One thing I'm going to ask is, do not, unless you had a reserved seat, do not save your seat. Take all of your stuff with you. And then when you come back, meet a new neighbor. Sit somewhere different. Over the course of these 15 minutes in this intermission, you all should have a blue card that you came in with on your name tag. You can go into the gallery through here. There's a gallery of all the companies who are presenting today, all the companies in the cohort. And if you want to get in touch with them, if you want to follow their journey, just take this card and touch it on the displays. And we can show you how to do that. You'll be sharing your contact information. You'll be asking to follow them as they grow and scale their businesses. Thank you so much. See you in 15 minutes.
The founder and CEO of Unreasonable Group, Mr. Daniel Epstein.
We're back after intermission. Hopefully you got the chance to mix and mingle with the fellows, to use those electronic cards so that they could follow up with you directly into the future. And now we're going to jump into wave 2. But before we meet the entrepreneurs, we're actually going to do a quick panel. And this panel is going to be around understanding the barriers to growth and the barriers to scale. I'm going to introduce our moderator, who have the distinct privilege of welcoming to the stage. That's Francine Lacroix. She is an esteemed journalist with Bloomberg. I was actually just reading some of her accolades. She was knighted in Italy. And in 2013, she was ranked the personality, or the TV personality of the year. She's an incredible individual who takes these issues and the opportunities that we're exploring seriously, and she's going to take us through this panel conversation for the next 20 minutes. Let's give Francine a very warm round of applause and welcome to the stage.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a little bit embarrassed. Thank you. I've actually always wanted to be kind of like a talk show host, so this is amazing. Let me introduce my panel. I'm really excited. We're going to try and keep it inspirational, aspirational. We want to talk about understanding the barriers to scale and really to provide an authentic but also tangible view into what the scale-up journey looks like and feels like. So please give a big round of applause to Steve Dring, co-founder and chief executive officer of Growing Underground, and Brian Riley. And Brian Riley, global head of equity capital markets, investment bank Barclays. Guys, thank you. Scaling up, how difficult is it? Stephen, talk to me a little bit about your journey.
Where do I start?
In 2012 is where you started.
2012, yeah, and in 20 minutes. So, 2012 we started.
3.5 minutes, Daniel's clock.
Yeah, 2012 the journey started, and that was literally idea to 2014 when we launched the business. 2014 is when we crowdfunded. Bit of feedback. 2014 is when we crowdfunded, and then taking it through to 2016 when we raised some more from a corporate investor, and from there, where we sit today, just about to kind of move into the scale-up phase, and we're now into kind of VC world.
Okay, so how difficult is it to scale up? Is it funding? Is it that you sit around the table and think, oh, I really want to get bigger, I really want to scale up?
I brought a list.
And it's 25 pages long.
It's 20, yeah, I've had to cut this down. And literally, I've got a lot of friends that work in different stages, whether it's very early ideas stage all the way through to some of the guys you see here just really making some significant impact on their kind of Series E rounds type thing. But I've got some very facetious friends who said just having a bad idea is going to be a really sort of massive problem in terms of scaling up. But then you look around and you say, oh, there's many different things, but getting the right mentors, getting the right support. Sort of, if you get that wrong, then you're going to have some challenges in terms of scaling. And then building a team. You've got zero funds. You've got no salaries that you can offer in terms of, not a massive salary. And so you're asking people to kind of believe in what you're saying and come along on that journey with you. And then you get through to things like the finance and the funding and all of that. But there's also just then entrepreneurial life, like having friends and family that expect you to miss a birthday now and again. And so, yeah, you kind of dedicate everything to it. And there's a lot of barriers along the way. And by doing that, by overcoming all of that, you make sure you get good friends and family, you have a good idea, you make sure that you kind of get good mentors, and when they've kind of exceeded their purpose, you get another one, because you're going to be at different stages. No disrespect to anyone in the room as a mentor. And get the right support. Don't kill your business partner along the way, which is always a challenge as well. And then, but then also, it's mainly attracting people is the serious kind of challenges, and then the barriers, and then finance as well. But they're the two areas.
You need the backing of the bankers. You make all of this possible, Brian. What's the most common mistake?
They make it possible.
That entrepreneurs, yeah, but you help Scott. You help with the funding. You help in the scaling.
You're being very kind.
Okay, so what is their most common mistake?
Yeah, as a banker, I never want to be presumptuous in saying I know the challenges of an entrepreneur. But real quickly, just Francine mentioned I'm global head of equity capital markets. What we do, our team does is cover companies across all industries, raising equity capital, both public capital, so IPOs, as well as for private companies. We raise late-stage private equity for them. And we recently, within our team, set up a social impact finance arm where we are specifically focusing on companies whose business plan is to address a social environmental challenge. And my colleague Jed Lynch, who runs that group, is here somewhere. But there are common characteristics or common mistakes that some companies from our perspective do when they are ready to tap, say, the public markets, the IPO market, or late-stage private equity. And there are certain things that I'll tell you from the positive standpoint. Companies that are successful, what do they look like? First and foremost, they have strong management teams. Now you might be saying, well, that's stating the obvious. Of course they have strong management teams. But what I'm talking about is public and private investors want to invest in companies with management teams who really, really can articulate a strategic vision. I can't tell you how many times we go and visit a company, a private company, and we're visiting with a CEO or founder who's absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. They can talk forever about, the problems in society and why the government's falling down and how they form their business. But you get out of a 2-hour meeting and you turn to your colleague and say, what exactly is it that they do? So that elevator speech, as we're seeing here today, some really good ones, is really important. 5 minutes, right? 3.5 is not fair, by the way. But 5 to 10 minutes, you got to do 3 things. You got to articulate, what is the problem I'm trying to solve with the opportunity I'm trying to capitalize on? Number 1. Number 2, how exactly is my company doing it? And number 3, why can I do it better than anybody else? What's your competitive advantage? And importantly, how is that sustainable? Equity investors, by definition, are optimists, but if you can't answer those 3 questions, you're going to lose them. The other thing that companies do well, can do is really articulate the path to commercialization. I think back to companies that didn't do this well. I think back to the most recent generation of companies that went public in the alternative energy space. So 5, 6 years ago, a lot of them went public without a real path to commercialization and therefore without a real path to profitability. Now they had to, and this is an important part, right? Because they had to tap the public market to get the capital to be able to show a path towards commercialization, but they didn't get there fast enough and the public investors got impatient and they dumped the stock. The difference today is the private capital formation around social impact is very different today than it was 5, 6 years ago. So companies staying private longer to prove out that commercialization, that's really important. How do you do that? Signing customer contracts, entering into strategic joint ventures, maybe doing some commercial demonstrations.
So how much bigger is it now compared to back then?
Well, the capital that's been raised, well, we can go more into this, but we've tried to get some data around that, but you just think about anecdotally, we all know, aware of the TPG Rise Fund raised $2 billion, and what was that, mid-2017? Now they're raising another fund for $3 billion. Bain has done it, Partners has done it, and then family offices. I know there's a lot of people in the audience from family offices, has been a really focus. So it's gone from close to zero to something a lot better than that in just a 5 or 6 year period. And I think that's very important for investors who are trying to scale up, do it in the private domain.
You used crowdfunding.
Right? Yeah, crowdfunding.
What's your next step? How do you scale the next time?
Next time is using our current cohort of investors, high net worths, ultra high net worths, and VC money. That's how you really kind of start to ramp up that scale.
But why did you go for crowdfunding?
Crowdfunding at its start, I think one of my investors, when I turned around and told her I was a startup, she said, "Darling, you're just an idea." and that's a good place to go and start, is crowdfunding. You crowdfund an idea, and then you take that through, and then you kind of, once you've gone through that journey, you're kind of on to the next bit.
By the way, that's an innovation that's been pretty significant too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, crowdfunding didn't exist 6 years ago, did it?
No.
I look at all the entrepreneurs who are here today, and I admire the courage that they have had to take the risk. Well, now that you can do it through the internet and raise some startup money, boy, that's pretty powerful. But then you go, and once you start to prove it out, and then you go out, you get that key anchor investor. But that didn't exist, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Brian, what's your killer question? So you're meeting an entrepreneur for the first time. Do you have a killer question that you ask every time that gets them every time?
Yeah, those 3 questions that I just asked. I really do. I don't mean to be flip about it, but it's just very clearly tell me exactly, because I'm not a specialist in this. I sit across all of our industries. My colleague Jed Lynch is becoming a real specialist in it, but I really want, dummy it down for me, right? The way a lot of our entrepreneurs are doing today, really dummy it down for me and tell me exactly how are you going to scale up quickly.
So it's execution. It's almost execution, even trumps an idea. Would that be fair?
Sure. A lot of people, right? Again, a lot of entrepreneurs in the room, they know there are a lot of good ideas out there that someone can execute on, but you also got to be able to articulate it. And again, I can't emphasize enough practicing over and over again to be able to say this is exact. Now that might change, right? You guys know your businesses morph over time, and the opportunity might shift, but being able to articulate it.
Stephen, give me a sense. So the green economy, opportunity, but it also means, I guess, there are a lot of contenders. Is it easier now than it was in 2012, or do you also feel more competition?
I just think competition is healthy. We just see so many people entering this space now. Most of the start, if you're not baking sustainability into your business model when you're starting something, then you're kind of not future-proofing your business. And so all right, I hang around with a lot of people who are in impact startups, but I find that most businesses are kind of focused in that area at this precise moment.
But how do you, I guess, increase that attention to those kind of companies?
But then I think things like impact accelerator programs, the partnership between Unreasonable and Barclays, and an unlikely partnership when I kind of first got introduced to it. And very quickly it made sense to me. It took about 24 hours and then I got it.
So what did you get out of the accelerators?
Where do I start with that? I came to startup life very late. I did many years as a semi-successful capitalist, and then moved into this kind of entrepreneurial space and startup space. And accelerator programs were something I just weren't in my world. And then we start up this business, and then suddenly the Unreasonable guys have approached us. And what they brought to us is, like, not just them, but them and Barclays together. And first of all, it's just kind of putting you in a room with a load of other entrepreneurs, and all just being completely open and sharing all of the challenges that you face. And pretty much everyone's facing a lot of similar challenges. And just that honesty, and creating that space for that honesty. You then bring in the mentors, like we saw Tom Chi earlier. Like, when you've got a guy from Google X talking about rapid prototyping a salad, which was just something, but he did. And we've taken the learnings from that. But then also the experts from Barclays that come in, and whether it's across the PR guys or the legal team, like before you even get to the financial stuff, like all of the other benefits that go, and then that flows back into Barclays as well. I've seen, across a couple of programs now that I've attended, I've seen the guys just super enthused going back into Barclays and fired up in terms around that, being amongst loads of people that are just really dedicating their lives to getting businesses off the ground.
Talk to me a little bit more about the investor base.
Yeah.
You were talking about how it's actually expanding. How big is it going to get?
Well, you know, I think a lot of people in this room, I hope a lot of people in this room would agree with this. I think what, you know, talking about ESG, environmental, social, and governance, and SRI, socially responsible investing, across the spectrum, right? And on the one hand, you have ESG integration, right? So that's more of a risk management or risk mitigation tool. I think I've read that 1 in 4 big mutual funds, so we're talking about public markets right now, mutual funds have ESG data in their investment decisions. If you go to a lot of big mutual funds, they all have ESG risk officers. So if I'm a portfolio manager or an analyst, I want to invest in a stock, I have to go to the investment committee. There's going to be an ESG officer sitting on that panel, make sure they check the box. Daniel showed that slide from BlackRock. We've heard Larry Fink and how vocal he is in saying we only want to invest in companies that are having a positive impact on society. So that's more risk management, and that's great, and that's really important. But then you start to move up the spectrum towards thematic investing and companies, again, mostly we're talking about the public realm, investors looking to invest in themes, whether it be transportation or water or energy. Now using ESG data, not only as a risk management tool, but also as something to generate alpha. And again, BlackRock and others are doing that as well. The really exciting part, I know for everybody in this room, is SRI investing, and I think everybody would agree there's even a spectrum within SRI investing, but that's where the capital that I talked about is really important, because usually in the capital markets, when you're seeing private capital being raised, as it is around social impact and the environment, it usually means that that's here to stay. And again, very different than I think 5 to 6 years ago. One thing that I'll just mention, though, regardless of whether where we are along the spectrum, one of the important themes for the entrepreneurs in the room, one of the important themes is impact measurement. Investors, whether they be mutual funds or private equity funds or venture capital funds, want to be able to show their investors that the companies they're investing in actually are having the impact that they say they're having. So as you think about becoming raising later stage private equity as you think about becoming a public company, really think about what are the important metrics for your company that you're going to measure yourself by, and you're going to show that, yes, we are having an impact, and be consistent on how you report those metrics, because regardless of where you are on the spectrum, that's a big topic of conversation.
Brian, do you see a difference between a European investor, a UK investor, and the US, or Asian investors? Do they care? Does one care more about ESG than another?
We were talking about this a little bit. I think there is no question that historically speaking, a U.S. investment community has been less risk averse than European investors, right? That's partly just investments coming out of the valley, and in San Francisco, they're used to funding tech companies. Everybody knows that. Given that Europe is so much further along in this than we are in the U.S., and certainly our current administration isn't helping the matter. That's all I'm going to say, Debbie. I'm not going to say anything, because I know we're being filmed. But I think that's starting to change. And I found, and Stephen might disagree with me, I actually think in many ways, entrepreneurs in Europe are starting to become much more willing to take risk relative to their American counterparts. But the capital still, for the most part, resides in the U.S., and that is really what's going to determine people's risk appetite going forward.
Yeah. Do you see a difference?
Yeah, it's the conversation we're having outside. Exactly that. I think in the States, I find the VC and the risk level is kind of taken in earlier stage businesses, and in the UK, it kind of gets to here. And whereas we've got usually funded by angels and high net worths and family offices, kind of fall more into that space where VCs in the US would step in earlier and take that little bit more risk. But I find that we've now got the kind of government things like innovate loans. Once you've gone through that startup, kind of go through the commercialization piece. Just as you're getting to that commercialization piece, that's where finance kind of steps in the US. We find that it's kind of they want the proven model for a little bit longer in the UK. It's certainly not just our feeling, but from friends that I discuss this with.
I do think the good news is maybe Americans are not, when it comes to investing in this sector, aren't as narrow-minded as we typically are, and they do recognize that Europe, for many reasons, Europeans are much further ahead in some of these trends. So you do see a lot of capital flowing from the U.S. I mean, you look at I haven't looked at the rises of portfolio companies, but my guess is that a lot of them are European and Asian companies. It's not all.
I mean, what's the biggest barrier to scale? Brian, we said a bad idea is never a good idea to scale up.
It is again, the risk of sounding redundant. I really do think it is commercialization. And perhaps a lot of the entrepreneurs that already presented today would agree with me. These are all really, really cool ideas that are innovative and really are touching on a real need. But and some of them said it, right? If you know some customers who are interested, right? Yeah. That is oftentimes, once you get that funding, whether it be through crowdfunding or through venture capital or later stage private equity, it is really finding those customers. Some of these are big customers, right? Someone flashed Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and those are big customers. Unless they are investing in your business, which by the way is not a bad idea, sometimes it's tough to get them to be so risk averse, right?
How do you leverage large corporates? So again, it could be very lonely, right, at the top of being an entrepreneur. Do you need to use bigger corporations? Do you need a sounding board?
Yeah, we took a corporate investment from one of sort of Europe's largest kind of salad growers, and they provided not just a sounding board, but a ton of support across a lot of different areas of the business, as well as the insight, customer insight that you just wouldn't get access to. And that unlocked all of the retailers, most of the major retailers across the UK that we're now supplying. Most of that comes through a corporate investment and then allowed us to push through to that place, to that space. But you see kind of corporates entering sort of startup life like Barclays with the Unreasonable program. And you look at some of the venture arms coming out of most of the corporates now. For me, sort of all of what used to be traditional, say, R&D spend, is now you see that kind of drifting towards, well, let's just kind of work with those incubators or with accelerator programs by bringing, like coalescing those startups and using that R&D money to actually, that's your future revenue and future R&D pipeline, is by investing in startups.
Was there ever a moment where you didn't believe in yourself or in the company? I'm just, one, no, obviously.
You've got a massive ego.
You have to. To be an entrepreneur, you have to.
You've got to have thick skin, huge ego, and get that fine line between humility and arrogance. And as my mother reminds me, there's a very fine line. But yeah, you go through, you have your good days, you have your bad days, but like I said, you get that support network around you. Like some of the barriers are some of this real personal stuff around having the right people around you, getting a good therapist, and all of that good stuff.
All right, gentlemen, that's all we have time for. Brian Riley and Stephen Drain. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francine. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Stephen. That was brilliant, and that helps kick off the next wave of companies. We're going to look at the future of sustainable living. Earlier, I mentioned that last year, one of the entrepreneurs took stage, Ron with Brisometer, who had one of the most accurate databases of air quality on the planet. He can monitor that. He can share that with you in your phone, based off his app, in your pocket, anywhere you go. The next entrepreneur, Sophie, does not just monitor the air quality, she cleans the air quality with her products. Her last name is Power. I think it's very fitting. An anecdote about Sophie. She's mother of two. And after she gave birth to her second child, a couple months later, she ran an over 100-mile race. Sophie is a true force of nature. She is truly powerful. She's going to kick off the next wave. Let's sit back on the edges of our seats. Let's give her a very loud, warm round of applause and welcome to the stage, Sophie Powers.
So 90% of the world's population breathe polluted air. And every year it kills 7 million people. But it's not just in developing countries. In London, it takes 60 months of our lives. These are my sons, Danica and Cormac. Born in London, their lungs will never grow as big as they should do. But maybe they're lucky, because in Delhi, 60% of children have poor lung function, and air quality takes 7 years off of their lives. And governments talk about plans to reduce emissions, but the reality is that for many global cities, air quality is only going to get worse. And for cities like ours, it won't reach healthy levels for decades. And the health of our families really can't afford to wait that long. I believed I could make a real difference and find a solution to reduce exposure to air pollution. And at Air Labs, we clean the air people breathe. So how do we do it? Well, first we understand that pollution. So we've created a low-cost, high-accuracy air quality sensor that we believe will be a game changer for smart city solutions. Next, we clean the air. And our team of atmospheric chemists have developed a unique nanocarbon filter that removes all harmful air pollutants, including over 95% nitrogen dioxide and all gases and all particles. And there's no point cleaning the air if people aren't breathing that clean air, and that's where advanced airflow engineering comes in. So we showcase our technology in many forms, from clean air pods at Somerset House, to clean air bus shelters in London with JC Dassault and The Body Shop, and a large railway station to follow later this month. In Delhi, this is an outdoor clean air zone, combining our airflow engineering and our clean air technology with the air inside up to 80% cleaner. We partnered with Stella McCartney in A Touch of Glamour, bringing clean air to her polluted flagship store around the corner from here. And what she's helped us do is raise the issue of air pollution in the workplace, as well as showcasing our solution. And that solution in a ventilation system is highly flexible and low energy, and we're now ready to roll that out to workplaces globally, creating healthy spaces for people. What you may not know is the air inside your car is worse than that outside. The air inside your car is only really as clean as the exhaust in front. And driving in London traffic alone is like breathing 2 cigarettes an hour. So we developed the solution to the problem. And in just 3 weeks, we ship our first units of our air bubble, our first consumer product. Now this attaches to the back of the passenger headrest and cleans the cabin air in minutes. We're selling to business fleets to protect their workers, but also to consumers to protect themselves and their families. And our scientific research and the air bubble and all of our technology has received a lot of attention globally and really raised awareness on air pollution. We're talking to car companies to integrate our filter directly into their vehicles and evaluating options to use our filter and our sensor technologies in the most impactful ways. Air quality is a global health issue. And we can't clean the air of an entire city. And we can't reverse the damage that's already been done to our children. But we can clean the air that you and your families breathe, bring us all a healthier future. So if you want clean air in your workplace or clean air for your children, we'd be delighted to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Who doesn't want clean air to breathe? Everybody should be talking to Sophie at the intermission. Next entrepreneur, from reimagining the air we breathe to the homes we build and the homes we live in, Steve Glenn, coming from California, is going to take the stage and show us a glimpse of how the future home is going to be built and how it's going to be sustainable. Let's welcome Steve to the stage.
Thank you. So, Plant Prefab, we design and manufacture sustainable, high-quality, single and multifamily homes. We do it in half the time that it takes with a traditional site-based construction method for far lower cost and far lower waste. I'm going to give you a very quick background on the markets we're targeting and on the problems we're trying to solve. So, in the US, from the 50s on, the majority of new construction was happening in the suburbs, and that exacerbated urban sprawl, transportation problems, pollution, stress. Fortunately, like the rest of the world, in the last 10, 15 years, the US has become more urbanized, and for those of us who care about climate change, which I hope is everyone here watching, urbanization is great because it means people are closer to jobs, transportation, services. Now, the most visible part of the increased urbanization in the US are maybe the large 40-story apartments and condos you see in Midtown and downtown Los Angeles. But actually, on a percentage growth basis, there's far faster growth in individuals buying teardowns, putting up new homes. The average home in the US is 37 years old. And developers developing duplexes, triplexes, quads, 5 units on lots that hitherto had maybe 1 home. And this is good news. It means greater density in cities. Well, when you're building in cities, what we call the urban market, you're always having to hire an architect and do a custom design because lot sizes vary, zoning varies. It's a difficult and time-consuming process. Fortunately, more cities are mandating that you build in an environmentally responsible way. More individuals care about this, and this is important because as a category, buildings in the US, and I learned this is similar in the UK, use more energy and are responsible for more carbon emissions than industry and actually transportation. Now in the US, we have a perfect storm of events that are really making the construction process, which was never easy in cities, even more difficult. Costs are going up for land, for labor, for materials. Permitting is getting more difficult. So the gap between supply and demand is increasing. In California, we have about 100,000, demand for 100,000 homes in the last few years, more than supply, and that's growing. Now, the process of actually doing the construction, if you're building one of these bigger multi-story apartment or condos, you work with professional general contractors. But if you're doing these small projects, an individual home or a small development, you're working with local mom and pop general contractors, and there are many who are great and there are many who are not so great. It costs more than you budget, it takes more time. Let me show you a way that we've introduced at Plant Prefab. You can go online today. You can pick from a growing number of great world-class architects, from homes they've designed, and you can configure these homes like cars with materials and finishes and fixtures and environmental systems that you select. We then build it in a controlled indoor all-weather environment in 1 to 3 months in parallel to the site work. We do it with far less waste. We ship on a day. We install. This is a 16-unit dorm we did for a nonprofit in Berkeley. We installed in 11 hours. And thank you. We have a patented building system that we use to do this. We are very focused on reducing energy and water use and resources and improving indoor air quality. And let me show you briefly an example of some of the stuff we've done. This is our first home ever certified LEED Platinum, which is a green building certification program. Platinum, their highest level. First in the history of the program to be certified Platinum. This is our first multifamily project, first LEED Platinum in Northern California. So this is our first affordable housing project. This is in the lower 9th Ward in New Orleans. This is 5 homes we did at the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in Montana, also LEED Platinum level. We just announced last week a Series A, about $7 million. Amazon made their first investment in a home building company. We're very excited about that. We'll be doing some fun stuff with them. Hopefully someday we'll be over here. We'd love to build a home for you and do it in half the time and at less cost. If you come over to the States, we're happy to show you what we're doing and happy to talk to you later. Thank you very much.
And although they raised from Amazon and they could build a house in half the time for lower costs and it's much more sustainable, Steve did mention the other day, it will not be a single click purchase like on Amazon. It won't be the next day. It's close to that. That's the closest thing you could get. And actually, one of those really beautiful homes that he was showing, he didn't mention that's actually his home. So he just gave you a glimpse of his personal home as well. The next entrepreneur we're going to welcome to the stage is joining us from India. She's had some very exciting news since our last program in Hong Kong over the last couple of months. I'm going to let Hema tell you about that. I'm going to let her tell you about how she's created a small revolution around transportation job creation in the subcontinent. Everybody, let's welcome Hema to the stage.
In rural India, 600 million people do not own a vehicle or do not have transport. So this means mothers spend hours walking kids back and forth. It also means factory workers walk 12 kilometers in this factory alone. It also means that people spend hours waiting for a bus, don't know whether it'll come or not, sometimes end up missing work. Large, big brands have built scooters and motorcycles for the city population, but they've not understood really what the rural customer needs. And they've actually built some exciting features, a stunning motor console, exciting graphics, and many, many features that the rural customer does not need at all. So this is what we actually do in our company, Ampere Vehicles. We actually create affordable personal transport solutions. The vehicles that we create is about 50% cheaper than gasoline bikes. Running cost is 1/10 of petrol. And because now many villages have electricity, it is extremely convenient for them. And this example is a lady by name Mrs. Bhanumati. After dropping her kids in school, she uses this electric scooter to be able to sell tea to these construction workers. Earlier, she used to walk to sell tea. Today, she's actually have tripled her customer base and enhanced her income. So this is actually grassroots level entrepreneurship, a disruptive innovation working for the needs of the Indian market. If you look, this is a small innovation that we have done, patent pending, where many workers in the spinning mills need tools like this to be able to relieve them of knee pain. They are more efficient and the factory is productive as well. We have millions of such workers in India. Now, these are the rural dealerships that we have created, where today a rural customer do not have to go to town to buy these scooters. They're actually served in their own locality. We have created 150 such dealerships so far, and we wanted to scale that exponentially to 350 dealerships in the next 3 to 5 years. So electric vehicles today has become an irreversible moment we have actually saved 33 million gallons of petrol. We have actually prevented 17,000 tons of carbon emission so far. And providing cost savings, convenience, and freedom to our rural customers. Now, this is our factory where 40% are women workforce, and they have been empowered, they have been trained, they have been skilled, they have been reskilled to be able to extremely be productive in their workforce. And so we are a company believing and practicing our values. Lastly, our vehicles don't drink, don't shout, don't smoke. So please join me and give me your support in terms of ideas, introductions, because I wanted to scale this business to 1 million vehicles selling very soon, and I wanted to exponentially focus on job creation to be able to create 1,000 jobs in the next 3 years. Thank you.
Hema, you didn't share the news. Can I share the news, or is it private? The news? Come back out.
I didn't say that.
So Hema was in the Hong Kong program that we just ran about 3 months ago,
Sure.
focused on ventures in Southeast Asia, and in between now and then, what happened?
I was in Hong Kong. I had a large partner wanted to come and partner with me. I was in a dilemma whether to take the offer or not. But that Hong Kong summit program done by Unreasonables, where I was one of the cohort with Barclays support, I think my perspective changed. So I had the clarity. Now I've joined hands with a larger partner. And so I think now the financial burden is a little bit off. So the plan is only executing on the ground and scaling my creation.
Brilliant. So she probably had the fastest acquisition we've ever seen out of a program, and is still the CEO, and the company kept the brand because it's so effective and it's creating so much impact as is. Next entrepreneur we're going to welcome to the stage. We've looked at our offices, we looked at our cars, we looked at our homes, we looked at our scooters. Thinking about sustainable living, it wouldn't be complete unless we looked at our showers. And Chris Jackson is going to tell us about the future of what your showers may very well and ought to very well look like. Everybody, Chris.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Water scarcity is a problem that increasingly will impact all of us. And today, all of us waste water. Most of the water that is used in the home is used in the showers. And we're going to change that. So my background is product, strategy, and I've been working on Kelda since 2010. And we've got proven product in the field with gyms. We're just about to scale up in Q4. I got the keys for the factory this week. I haven't been able to go yet because I'm here. We're launching a range of new variants. And interestingly, we started the company and found the technology by trying to take particles out of smoke. We don't have time for that right now. We all take fresh water for granted, everyone in this room, I suspect. However, that's not the case for almost 3 billion people on the planet who can't take that for granted. And by 2030, the planet, at current rates of consumption, will have 40% less water than it needs. 3% of the planet's water is fresh water, and less than 1% is accessible to sustain life. Most of that water is locked up in glaciers. With population growth, there are specific challenges around managing fresh water with pollution and climate change. So behind me, you'll see the original shower, which was invented in 1886 in London. And I think you'll bear with me that it hasn't changed too much. But I have a plan. So we take for granted that we can have a good shower now. And moving forward then, so we all enjoy the experience of a powerful shower, and I haven't met anybody who doesn't. However, we're all not so keen to turn the shower down. And if we do turn the shower down, then we get less rinsing capability, and we don't get that great shower experience. However, we do have a plan. So we exist because all showers use twice as much water as they should. We provide better showers that use half the water. And we've created the most efficient shower on the planet, and I'll explain how. Yeah. Thank you. So this is what we've done. We've reinvented the shower and developed new technology which is unique to the industry, and it's water in air. So anybody who thinks they understand and thinks there's anything similar, then I'm afraid you're mistaken, because there isn't. So we have an airstream. We put water into the airstream, and we use technology that we've developed from aerospace and cars, and we create a spray force which is 2.5 times more powerful using the same water. That sounds like magic, and it is. And all of the technology is in the little white bit in the middle. And we have, I think, 16 patents when I last counted, and 12 pending. So with our EEE technology, we give a more effective shower. We generate a better experience and save 50% on water, heating, drainage, and also reduce carbon emissions, helping to preserve the planet's ecology. If a medium-sized gym, and we do know gyms, has our showers, then they would save an Olympic-sized swimming pool with the water using Kelder showers. And that equates to roughly 20 homes in the UK and possibly half of that in the US. So we're partnering with gyms, and we've done a deal. Our first products come off the line next week. They're going straight to one of the biggest gym chains in the UK and Europe. They're going to be fitted. They're going to roll another 10 gyms out in December and change the whole fleet thereafter. So that's just one example of we have a production line and customers waiting for the new products. We have partners in leisure centre. We partnered with Greenwich Leisure, which is one of the biggest gym suppliers to the local authorities. They've got 250 gyms, and we partnered with them, and we're rolling out across their estate as well. We're doing some really exciting work with student accommodation and some big suppliers there, schools, facilities management, and also house builders. And the big learning for me over the last year, working with the commercial shower sector, is you've got to talk to people who care. So if anyone cares, then I'm your man. So we've developed the world's most efficient shower. We're on a mission to transform the shower industry. So when you wake up and you have a shower, you're not wasting half the water, which you are today. And if you do go to the gym, we can help you there as well. If anyone wants to join us on the journey, then I'm here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. I can't wait until we can put those in our own homes. Next entrepreneur coming from the Americas cohort is Eric. His company is Preserve. And we looked at the shower, but after you get out of that shower and you eat your breakfast, the question is, what type of utensils are you using and utilizing? And Eric is going to give us a glimpse of what those ought to be and will be. Everybody, Eric.
People in developing countries use an incredible amount of things a day and create an incredible amount of waste. In the United States, which is the worst, we create over 4 pounds per day of waste. And unfortunately, this waste is finding its way to America's waterways, the world's oceans. The 5 gyres are now a garbage patch. Many of you have seen the pictures of this. The good news is, when you ask people what they do for the environment, they recycle. And even the better news is, it actually makes a difference. So when you take a plastic package and you turn it into a new product, it uses less emissions, creates less emissions, uses less energy than if you made it from virgin plastics. At Preserve, for the last 20 years, we've been taking this recycling and turning it into fabulous products for your home. We take a yogurt cup and we turn it into a toothbrush, and a takeout container and turn it into a razor. We have 5 categories of products. We have #1 selling products in the $140 billion natural marketplace in the United States. And we've won Best for the Earth from B Corp's award systems for the last 6 years. And we're now looking to serve our preservers on the move. So we have a new food service division. Our best success there is a cutlery and dispenser, which is at all Whole Foods markets in the United States. It's made from 100% recycled materials, and it's actually recyclable through our Gimme 5 program at Whole Foods. In addition, we've just launched a full line of compostable tableware made from plants, compostable in your backyard, and that's also something that just got all of Whole Foods Market's distribution. In the States alone, sorry. We're working on the UK. It's a great place to work. 25% of emissions globally happen through the production, the mining, the recycling, hopefully, the waste, the disposal, and use of consumer packaged goods. At Preserve, we're focused on improving the circular systems around these consumer packaged products, and also using human design to find a better way to make, create, and dispense of these products, and use these products. This is Will, and fortunately that is the Preserve toothbrush in his hand. Thank you, Will. Plastics. Right? You say the word, there's a bit of a bad taste in your mouth when you say that word. We all kind of hear it in our ears as well. Plastics are an incredible material. They're lightweight, they're durable, they're flexible. They help our cars and our planes move faster with less emissions. They protect our food to deliver to your door safely. So they're an incredible material. But they also have a real dark side, right? They're the ones that get blown around. Cans and bottles don't get blown around. They're heavy. Plastics do. They find their way to the 10 major waterways that are heading into the ocean and bring the pollution with them, unfortunately, to our waterways. So recycling's been kind of covering our ass for a lot of years, but it's not really doing the trick. We need to create new materials. Preserve is working with some fabulous partners to make products from plants. We have a fork that's made from plants. It's compostable in your backyard. What we need to work on is potentially sequestering carbon and bringing that into this fork and making it marine degradable and making it non-toxic. So when a marine animal actually mistakenly takes a bite out of it, it's not toxic. Maybe it's a healthy tidbit that they can actually eat and benefit from. That's the future that we're working on at Preserve, and we'd love to have you join us in this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Who wins the Best for Earth award 6 years in a row? That's crazy. So next entrepreneur I'm going to welcome to the stage was in our most recent Asia Pacific cohort. Every company that you're hearing from here is centered around job creation in the green economy. We broke the rule for who you're going to hear from next, for Masumi, because the technology that she's wielding could potentially have so much impact on the future of healthcare that we had to work with her. So when we think about sustainable living, Masumi is going to talk to us about how we can do that in terms of our health and our own biology and our own bodies. Let's give her a very warm round of applause and welcome Masumi to the stage.
Thank you. So every year, millions of people are dying due to lifestyle diseases, and millions are threatened with vision loss, but these are all preventable. And with a huge scarcity of doctors across the world, it's not uncommon to have long shifts for these doctors, having to see thousands of patients, which effectively means they can spend only less than a minute to see a patient, which leads to misdiagnosis and overdiagnosis in large numbers. Moreover, the long waiting hours for the patients, costly diagnostics, as well as low infrastructure lead to patient fallouts, which means a huge percentage of these patients never ever get diagnosed of their diseases in their whole lifetime. And that's a mess of public health. And it's not a developing world problem, it's a global problem. And the one way to manage and control this catastrophe in the making is through early disease diagnosis, which is faster, easier, cheaper, accurate and robust, so that it can help timely treatment and follow-ups. And so at Chironex, we are building the AI-based platform, which is a proprietary patent-pending software AI platform, which is solving this problem. And we are using the back of the eye or the retina, which has the capability of early disease detection, risk prediction, and prognosis of hundreds of diseases which are local to the eye, as well as systemic in nature. By systemic, I mean diseases which are occurring at other parts of the body can also has their first ever manifestations or repercussions of those diseases at the retina. And these diseases can span from tumors to Parkinson's to hypertension, diabetes, heart diseases, and so on. So, currently, we are able to diagnose over 10 plus eye diseases with an accuracy of 95% in less than a minute. It can plug and play into any third-party hardware device which is used to scan the retinal image. It's a cloud-based software, and so can be accessed anywhere, anytime. And we have deployed this software across several hospitals in India, and it's currently undergoing clinical and business validation. While our mission is to transform the efficiency of the doctors and the hospitals across the globe and disrupt the healthcare delivery system currently existing, our ambition is to create eye as the de facto standard for hundreds of disease detection, non-invasively and cost-effectively, thus helping us fulfill our vision of democratizing healthcare for the next 6 billion population.
Thank you, Mashumi, for all you do. Glimpse of the future of healthcare. In less than a minute, we have the reality where we will be able to detect 300 diseases non-invasively by looking at your eye, including cancer, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. Mashumi is leading that revolution. You got to bear witness to it. Now you can help her on her journey. The last entrepreneur in this segment is one of my favorite people. Everybody's my favorite people. But I got a special spot in my heart for Jerry Callahan. Jerry's going to close out the session. We're going to take another break and intermission. We're going to come back for the very final wave. This is the last entrepreneur around the future of healthy lifestyles. We heard about water consumption, and now we're going to hear about how we can heat it more efficiently and how we can heat it better. Jerry with HeatWorks, please take us there. Thank you, Jerry.
At HeatWorks, we are redefining how the world heats and uses water. That's important because every day, billions of people around the water use electricity to heat it. Everyone is wasting water, energy, and time. The reason is because water heating technology hasn't changed in over 100 years. Electric resistance heating elements get really hot, transfer the heat to the water, which takes time, results in imperfect temperature control, and are inefficient. Relatively quickly, they get limescale on them, which causes them to lose efficiency even more, causes premature failure, and adds impurities to the water. You can prove that to yourself by going home and turning on your pod-type coffee maker like a Keurig and running it through one cycle without a pod in it, and then smell and taste the water. I figured this was a big enough problem to do something about it, so several years ago, I had invented something called ohmic array technology. Quite simply, we use graphite electrodes and advanced electronics to pass controlled electric currents through the water, making the water the heating element itself. It does it instantly at virtually 100% efficiency with no scaling. Sounds cool, Jerry. What does it mean to me? Purity, no pure way to heat water. It's the best shower in the world, and you'll end up with a perfect cup of tea. Precision, heats it instantly with temperature control with plus or minus 5 degrees. That's important because every time you use cold water to mix with hot water to get the ideal temperature, you've wasted energy. Performance, up to 40% energy savings and up to 10% water savings over the life of the product, endless hot water, full IoT connectivity. We will have our products either with our own name on them or with partners in all of our core vertical markets by 2020. That's our audacious goal. But we're not waiting for the OEMs. We have a current product we're selling today called the Model 3 water heater. It's a whole house water heater. It's about this big as opposed to very large things. In the US, it'll save the average home $240 a year on electricity passively, which is an ROI of less than 4 years. Saves up to 2,100 gallons of water per year, and not insignificantly, if over the replacement cycle, every home in the United States that had electric water heater replaced it with a Model 3, you could close down 12 coal-fired power plants. It's got a very cool app with it. You can adjust the temperature perfectly. You can see how much water you've used, how much electricity you've used, what that costs you. And for those who have teenage children, you can also tell them, hey, Jerry, you got a minute left in the shower. I'm turning the temperature down. Gets them to the breakfast table very quickly on a school day. We also think design is important when you have a terrific technology, so we actually won a CES Innovation Award, and most importantly, just got a Red Dot Design Award for 2018. And we'd like to thank our design partners, Frog Design, for helping us with that. Terrific group of people. This next product's quite interesting. It's Tetra. It's a countertop dishwasher. It's self-contained. It's this big. It does a whole cycle in 15 minutes with a gallon of water. Requires no plumbing connection, so you can put it anywhere you want. It does require electricity. Uses 80% less energy and water. Also a big design winner. And coincidentally, it's actually on display at the Design Museum in Kensington. You can go have a look at it. So in summary, we've got a lot of traction. We've got proven and scalable technology across many verticals. We've got terrific IP protection. We have significant interest from strategics. Not one has ever said they're not interested in technology. They're just trying to figure out how to deploy it. And we're working on projects now, everything from putting better water heaters on commercial aircraft to water heaters the size of a truck to desal plants. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank Stephen Birkenfeld and Sukarita Dasa from Barclays Investment Bank Group in New York, who brokered our very first strategic deal. Thank you so much. Fantastic. We're post-revenue. We're shipping Model 3s. We've got backlog of 3,000. I wish the backlog was 0, but we're moving towards that, solving that problem. We have over 10,000 people signed up to buy Tetra, and it isn't even going to ship till 2019. And so if you want to join HeatWorks' team in helping to save up to 10% on water, up to 40% on energy, and countless man hours for those billions of people that use electricity, heat, water every day, come look me up after. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's it. That's the second wave. We're going to take intermission. We're going to have another break. Instead of 20 minutes, we're going to give you 15 minutes. We're running a little bit over. When we come back, we're going to have one more panel, and then we're going to hear from our final segment of entrepreneurs who are going to take us all the way to outer space. I mean that quite literally. It should be a fantastic last round. Thank you all for being a wonderful audience.
Will you please welcome back to the stage the founder and CEO of Unreasonable Group, Mr. Daniel Epstein.
Coleman from our team was just like, I have to tell you something really important, and then I got called on the stage. So welcome back from intermission. We are now in the final chapter of this afternoon's gathering of the World Forum of Unreasonable Impact. And I promise you it is going to be just as special, just as fascinating, just as revealing as the first two. We're going to begin this one with a panel, just like we did in the last chapter, and it's going to be looking at behavioral finance and kind of the psychology and our impressions around this topic of impact investing. I have the privilege of welcoming the panel to the stage, and we're going to bring up the moderator first, who comes from Barclays and is the head of, we just wrote it down, growth. Can't you put the slide up, Andy? This is a vulnerable moment for you. Thank you. Deborah Taylor, who's, I want to get the title right, Director and Co-Head of Sustainable and Thematic Investing for Barclays Equity Research. Deborah.
Thank you. Yes, so for the next 20 minutes, we're going to flip things around and give an investor's viewpoint on things. And we're going to focus, as was just mentioned, we're going to focus on behavioral finance and impact investing. And I'm delighted to have with me two co-hosts of join us on the panel. We've got Damien Payatakis,
who's head of impact investing at Barclays. He leads our efforts on offering impact investing solutions to clients, and as a result of his work, we've received awards in research and fund innovation. I'm also delighted that we have Joy Tuffield with us from Generation Investment Management. Generation are renowned for their highly successful work in sustainable investing, and Joy herself has a wealth of experience in this area and also a background in research and as a reformed oil and gas analyst, I believe, and a background in research in climate security at Chatham House. So thank you very much for joining us. So let's not beat around the bush. Starting off with, there's a lot of terminology when it comes to sustainable investing and even impact investing. Could you both give me a little viewpoint on what impact investing in particular means to each of you?
Sure. So at Barclays, we see impact investing as very simply investing intentionally to generate financial returns and also societal impact for two reasons or two aims. One is to think about how do we protect and grow our assets, and the other is how do we make a positive contribution to our world. And as you said, there's a lot of different understandings and definitions as a new and evolving field, so let's try to also clarify them from our experience and from our insight. Let's start actually with what they're not. So very clearly, they're not philanthropy, right? We're investing, we're putting our capital at risk, and we're expecting a financial return around that. What they're also not is ethical investing, which we're starting from a specific set of views or values that are going to drive our investments. They're not specifically focused on any one sector, they're not an asset class in and of themselves, and they're not focused necessarily just on solving a particular problem or for a particular company, or even just about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Where it becomes really interesting, and certainly the way that we see it a little bit differently from a lot of other organizations, is impact investing is a verb, it's not a noun. In that sense, it's about bringing impact into the investment process as a consideration, not a descriptor in terms of how we think about an investment itself. And ultimately, what it really comes down to is the fact that we recognize there are challenges around the world, that our capital is going to have an impact in a portfolio or an investment, no matter how large or small, is actually going to have an impact, and as an investor, we may want to influence what that impact is.
Okay, that's really interesting. And Joy, is that kind of...
That's, yeah, very well put. I think the way that I tend to describe it is impact investing is a bit of an umbrella term that ends up covering a whole number of different strategies. At the one extreme, which you said doesn't count, but I say counts, is philanthropic investments, right, where you are happy to give up returns in order to have some form of impact. And then all the way at the other end of the extreme, you have where kind of generation sits and what we're attempting to do, which is to say that if you are to incorporate impact and sustainability thinking into your investment making decision process, you're going to be able to generate better returns than if you were not. So we are very much focused on using sustainability as a helpful lens in kind of better investing and getting better returns.
Really interesting, and actually I think this is something I'd like to dig into a bit deeper. So in terms of process, how do you incorporate that into your investment decision making?
I could talk about this for hours, but I won't. So I think if you were to think about it very, very simplistically, there's kind of like two buckets of considerations that you need to take into account, and this depends on the industries and sectors that you're looking at. But the first bucket is asking a question, and a very simple one, which is what are the products and services that this company are providing? And are these products and services going to be relevant and generating a attractive kind of economics and returns in the very long term? And the long term doesn't mean 3 years, the long term doesn't mean 5 years, the long term means kind of decades on into the future. So you focus on what a company is doing, and depending on the sector that you're looking at, the kind of factors that you will take into consideration will differ. So if you're looking at something in the transportation space, carbon, for example, is going to be a huge factor of things that you'll be considering. But if you're looking at the healthcare space, carbon doesn't much matter or is much less material than sustainable selling practices, for example. So the second bucket of things that you should look at is how a company operates. So have they got sustainability kind of ingrained in how they're running their organization and how they are dealing with the various stakeholders that they're going to have to interact with? And if you think about it in a really, really flippant way, as a kind of thought experiment, let's say you gave the same product to two companies of the same size, with the same skill set, same time, and one company was focused truly on incorporating sustainability thinking into their internal operations, and the other one wasn't. We believe that the one that does will, over the long term, outperform the other in a very simple way.
Really fascinating. And Damien, I know that you've done some work around behavioral finance. How does that kind of come into this discussion?
Absolutely. So behavioral finance, for those less familiar, looks really at our biases as individuals, how we actually think about and make decisions, how we invest, and actually, unfortunately, a lot of the negative or the unintended consequences. We tend to do things like we buy high and we sell low. We tend to over or underestimate our capabilities as investors. And what's interesting about behavioral finance is it actually starts to challenge some of the traditional assumptions around rational economic thinking in our investment decision making. That's not to say we're irrational, actually quite the opposite, but really what we're saying is there's a definition, or using just an economic rationality in our definition of what makes somebody an investor who's rational is a problem. Now, I'm not a behavioral finance expert. We are very fortunate that Barclays started a behavioral finance team about 10 years ago, and so one of the first in the industry really to help us and help investors think about how does that work. So what we did was we've actually been collaborating and partnering with that team to think about how does impact and behavioral finance come together. And we did some research and some interesting stats, but actually what's more interesting is underlying it. What are some of the challenges that we as investors may operate differently around if we think about impact? So, to the point of when we are thinking about making an investment, people tend to hold almost too much money in cash. They tend to actually, ironically, underperform because they're holding money to keep it safe. If you know that you're investing in a particular cause that helps to address carbon, does that actually help you to get invested? Or when markets are turbulent, does that actually, because you're thinking about not 3 years or 5 years or 2 years or a quarter, if you're thinking about 10 or 15 years, are you willing to hold an investment for a much longer period of time because you know what your money is going to? Insights like that are some of the things that we are starting to find, and I have to say, it's tentative. There's a lot more research that we need to do, but what's fascinating about it is it's actually helping us potentially, to the same point that you're making, think about how do we invest more effectively.
I think what's interesting, though, from what you mentioned, I'm just picking up on one thing. So, the cause that you're investing in could help you with your decision making. Could it actually encourage people or allow people to sacrifice financial returns as a result of the fact that it's a cause they're really enthusiastic about?
Well, the idea of impact investing requiring a financial return trade-off or sacrifice is a myth. Now, some investors will decide to do that because that's a priority for them, and some investment managers will target lower financial returns. Generation is not one of those investment managers in terms of how they're seeking to make the investments. And therefore, we know from industry research, academic research, and actually investor experience, it's not a requirement. So it's a nuance to say, well, I can choose to, but it's not one that you have to. I'd actually flip the question around to what you were just saying before, how companies operate and the goods and services they provide. Looking at those two things, if we're thinking about risks and opportunities, you guys have been hearing about the unreasonable companies. You think about the market opportunities that they have. You think about the problems they're solving. These are the challenges that are going to have massive implications, but also massive opportunities for growth and profitability. So actually, I almost look at it the other way around, as you were saying, and say, well, let's not look at impact investing as something that is negative, but actually, how does it enhance, or how do we invest better by thinking about impact?
Fantastic. And Joy, I'd be interested to hear, because obviously your generation are very successful at impact investing. What is your secret? What's your process? Could we learn a little bit more about that, particularly when you're looking across different sectors and geographies?
Yeah, I'd say one caveat, and this is, I think, the CEO of our firm kind of instills this in us. I think a lot of it's to do with luck, and we should be kind of like humble and be very clear that luck is a significant portion to play. But process and the way that we kind of systematically think about things also helps. So I come from a specific portion of Generation, which is the kind of growth equity fund. So here we're investing in private companies and looking to invest anywhere from kind of $20 million at the low end, potentially even up to $100 million at the upper end. And the way that we kind of think about and incorporate sustainability comes from right at the beginning when we start thinking about sourcing companies and kind of building out our pipeline. So we have a fundamental belief that every industry on Earth is going to go through some form of sustainability revolution. And with that, we think that that is a significant opportunity from an economic perspective and from an investment perspective. So point number one. Point number two is, and this is particular to generation, we have an incredibly research-driven approach. So we spend a lot of time thinking about and choosing particular technologies or industries that we care deeply about and we think are going to undergo a significant transition to a more sustainable outcome. And then we dedicate 6, if not 36 months to kind of truly understanding that space, developing a thesis, and identifying the companies that we really want to back. And the industries that we choose are those that we think are going through this disruptive trend. So right from the outset, the companies that we're talking to, actively engaged with, actively kind of reaching out to, are all kind of providing solutions and products and services that are kind of disrupting those incumbent industries in which they operate and providing more sustainable solutions. So that's from the kind of outset and the types of companies that we interact with and kind of talk to in the first place. And then secondly, when we're thinking about making an investment in a company, we care deeply about how a company kind of runs, and we engage with the management teams and frankly the rest of the organization to truly understand whether they kind of quote unquote get it, right? Like whether they understand that having good governance practices, having good sustainability practices, having appropriate stakeholder management, all of that will end up delivering a more robust and profitable and valuable company over time. And that's a lot of kind of testing and diligence with those companies. And frankly, if the management teams don't get it, then they might not be companies that we would ultimately be happy investing in and partnering with over time.
And as part of your work, when you're looking at sort of disruptive companies or those that tackle a particular challenge, social or environmental challenge, do you measure impact as part of that?
Yeah, so this can go down a real rabbit hole, but a very kind of like simple way of thinking about it is we work very closely with the companies that we invest in to try and figure out and hopefully kind of help them figure out what the key kind of performance indicators are that will end up driving value over the long term. So so every kind of company on Earth will end up sending out quarterly or if not monthly kind of KPIs to their investors. And many investors will be looking at kind of broader financial metrics. And we think that that is very important and we love seeing those. That's very helpful. But we also think that there are broader metrics that point to underlying factors of the organizations themselves which aren't appropriately captured in the financial metrics, but will actually end up delivering kind of outperformance over time. So a very, very kind of simple example is kind of unwanted attrition rates in your staff. Like that is something that we would want to see on a quarterly basis or an annual basis, because they are an indication of whether you have a sustainable culture and a sustainable way of running the business.
And Damien, do you have anything to add on sort of measuring impact?
So it is, and obviously as head of impact investing, we talk a lot about impact measurement, and it's one of those things that everybody is not quite obsessed with in the industry. And it's important, right? Because that is where the authenticity and the credibility of building this industry is going to come from. But let's put it in perspective as well. You know, think about risk, right? Risk as a concept, Markowitz wrote his paper in 1952. It took a couple decades for it actually to be built into the investment process until we take it today as an accepted, even if challenged, norm around how we invest. Impact investing that was christened about 10 years ago, right? We're still at the earlier stages of the industry, and allowing it some time to mature and evolve is definitely something that we need to do, and data around it as well. And actually, there's a great point that Joy makes that for us is important also in terms of the companies. If you're an investor wanting to have metrics, what I'm slowly being concerned about is vanity metrics. Metrics that make us feel good because we've got something to point to or something that fits into a glossy report, but actually not metrics that matter to the business or to the challenges that the company is trying to address. So if you are an entrepreneur who's being asked for metrics, or obviously if you're an investor who's looking at metrics, I'd actually look at another couple of layers of what you're saying. So not just what, right? What is a baseline of what you want to understand? But then, so what? what does that tell you about the company? So attrition rates are going to tell you something about how effective a company is in building and growing. But also, now what? Those second questions of what are you actually going to do? How does that change your investment process? What are you going to do about how you run your business are actually more important questions to ask than just what are your metrics and what are your measurements. And that's where the value comes in terms of thinking about the investment process.
Interesting. Joy, in your role in growth equity strategy, you must have great visibility on trends in different sectors. Can you provide a bit of colour on that, and particular sectors where sustainability is becoming more of an issue?
Yeah, so I think sustainability is an issue everywhere, across all industries. And this is very self-serving because it's the industries that I focus most on. But I think that a kind of good case in point, particularly over the last couple of years, is the transportation industry and the kind of significant disruptive shifts that are taking place there. So, and in two ways, really. So if you think about the kind of auto OEMs in general, they are being disrupted on two angles. One is the kind of carbon standpoint, so kind of the electrification of vehicles and kind of reducing the carbon impact of those vehicles themselves. And also, frankly, that they are pretty unsafe and are incredibly intricate but deadly toys that are handed over to individuals. So autonomy is also a sustainability transition that is taking place in the automotive industry because there are significant human health impacts from handing over relatively irresponsibly these like giant deadly machines to people who text while driving, who aren't actually very good at driving in the first place. So when you kind of think deeply about certain industries and the true impact that they're having, either on the kind of environment, on people, on health, on society, you end up kind of really understanding that there's a huge amount that technology in particular can do to address those issues and drive those industries towards a more sustainable outcome.
Interesting. So I guess one final question for you both. We've seen huge growth in assets under management, which are managed under a sustainable impact philosophy. Is it just a trend, or is it a fundamental shift in attitudes to investing?
Well, look, if I think about it, historically we've been agnostic about the impact that our investments are generating. We've been unaware about companies or not always conscious of them in terms of the causes or the outcomes that they're generating. I think for us, when we set out to establish an impact investing practice, we started on a very simple premise. Every investment has an impact. And once you start to accept that premise and recognize it, then all of a sudden you start to think about how do you invest differently. And that mindset shift is what we're starting to see. I don't think about investing, I think about it very differently today than I did before this. I know that from a personal perspective. And when I talk to our clients who are coming in or investors who want to perform better, thinking about that is massively useful. I will give one statistic from the research because this is fascinating. People who made an impact investment, 90% of them would be willing to make another impact investment and actually increase the allocation of their portfolio to impact investing. That is a clear shift in terms of investors who are getting active, and even more so when you start looking at demographic differences. I think ultimately the question that we're going to face, instead of today we talk a lot, the leaders, the innovators are going, why should I do this? I think ultimately it'll be the laggards who will be questioned in the future to say, how could you not think about impact? That for me is where the shift is coming. And it'll take some time, but ultimately that shift, I can't see it any other way.
Absolutely, and as we saw earlier, the pace of change is so great, it's almost crazy to ignore and not incorporate sort of how sustainable the business is into your investment decision making. Fantastic. Well, thanks ever so much for that. Hope you found the discussions enjoyable as I did.
Thank you, Joy, Deborah, and Damien for that wonderful panel. We are now not just going to talk about impact investing, we're going to explore the investees themselves. And we're going to look at the future of supply chains and what that means for how the world and how industry functions now and throughout the 21st century. First entrepreneur we're going to welcome up is Wilson, coming from Singapore. I just asked him in the back right before this. I said, how are you feeling right now? He said, I'm excited and I'm jet lagged. It's about 3 in the morning his time. So what we're going to need to do in this final round is do it one more time. Sit on the edges of your seats. You're going to have to be really loud as we welcome Wilson to the stage. We have to wake him up as he tells us about his breakthrough innovation and how supply chains will become more sustainable because of the technology he's putting on top of them. Everybody, let's welcome Wilson to the stage. Wilson.
So manufacturing impacts almost every aspect of our lives, from the food that we eat to the products that we buy. But there's an age-old kind of saying that brings about some trouble, which is no one really wants to know how the sausage is made. And that little issue there causes some pretty nasty problems for a lot of us. There's 2 big ones, and I'll go through the first one. The first one is, in order to get the products down to the ground, to the stores that you want it at, the earth is dug up. Forests are raised, jungles are cleared, pollution is put up into the air, put out into the ocean, put out into the waters. And it's just to make sure that you get your product, because one of the key things for consumers is that when you buy that new phone and you open that box for the first time and you peel back that little plastic sticker on the screen, you get that oh feeling. Yeah, so that's what we all want, right? Now, the problem with that, of course, is it's at the expense of the earth, and we have to find out how somehow we're going to have to juggle that. Right? So that's one big issue. Second big issue is actually for the manufacturers themselves. Right? So when you look at the high competition between manufacturers, you look at the increasing cost in wages, increasing cost in raw materials, and at the same time, we all want things faster and cheaper at the stores that we buy from, right? Because we want to maximize that oh feeling when we get that new phone. Right? So this is increasing pressure for them. And unfortunately, when that pressure increases, environmental conditions tend to slide to a not as critical priority in order to make sure that they stay in business. So what can we do? What can we solve? And how do we go about doing this? And Arcstone has essentially looked at this and said there's a way. And we can solve both these problems. One is real-time data, and 2 is from Arcstone's tool sets. And the way that we started doing this in the very first one to solve the issues of the manufacturers is by building and releasing the next generation manufacturing execution system. Now, this tool was designed to quickly deploy right onto the production floor, and in fractions of the time compared to our competitors, get onto the ground, digitize the process, pull in live information, control the production operations, and optimize it. Right? And this is something that is way more cost-effective and way faster than our competitors, which is surprising because these are massive behemoth competitors that are out there. I'm not going to name names just in case they happen to bank with you, right? But you'd figure with all those resources, and even a blind squirrel will occasionally find a nut, they haven't found this next generation nut. And Arcstone has found that, and since 2013, we found the nut and we've ran with it. Right? We've started out in Singapore. We've grown across 7 different countries. We have thousands of users. And all of this means that we have live data from these factories, which are then used for true visibility across the production floor. We can optimize the processes and we control efficiencies, and we've increased productivity. We've reduced the amount of downtime, which directly relates to less consumption of materials, less pollution, and getting the parts to you as quickly as possible. Right? Thank you. Now, in order to solve the other part, which is to show you how the sausage is made, Arcstone is coming out with ArcNet in next year, and this is designed to interconnect all these factories together that are producing all these individual parts, so that at the end of the day, a consumer can walk into a store and scan a QR code and trace back the entire history of how that product was made, which materials it used, where did it come from, how did it impact the world, how much electricity it consumed, how much clean water it consumed, and get this at your fingertips. So then there's no excuse for buying bad products that are bad for the earth. Right? So all of this is possible through 2 key things, real-time data and Arcstone's tool sets. And with these 2, we can actually change the way that people make things and people buy things. So for the crowd here, if you know of manufacturers that are keen to look into this and not only just drive cheaper products out, but are looking to do both good and do well, come talk to me when you have some time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wilson. Nobody wants to look behind the scenes necessarily and know how our products are made, but the next entrepreneur is going to reveal that sometimes we don't want to know how our products are disposed of. And this entrepreneur Ivan is going to show us a way where he's taken some of the hardest products in the world to dispose of and doing so sustainably. Ivan's joining us from the Philippines, and he's going to tell us all about his company and his breakthrough innovation. Ivan.
When we think of hospitals, we think about saving lives. Unfortunately, we don't think about the waste that most healthcare establishments produce, from blood to syringes to even to feces, disposal, even radioactive wastes. The average patient produces at least half a kilo of waste per day. And the problem is most cities don't have a clean and more economical way of disposing medical waste. So most of these ends up on our landfill, even for first world countries, amazingly. And with the advent of Ebola and all of these viruses that are mutating, this is not good. This is not good. Even the World Health Organization states that 12% of new HIV cases and 40% of hepatitis cases are due to improper handling of infectious medical waste. Incineration. Most countries incinerate their waste, but incineration is dirty, and they're not economical. They're expensive. And most of all, we all know that incinerations, they produce dioxin. And dioxin is one of the most dangerous carcinogens known to man. And yes, dioxins are now found on our milk, on our eggs, even on breast milks. So it's not good. It's not good. So what we did is we developed a system, economical system to treat medical wastes. And one of the features is to turn plastics into useful gas, which is recycled to the system. So the system is non-incineration. It goes to a thermal chamber where the treatment happens. After the treatment, it goes to a cooling chamber. The output is safe, non-infectious waste, ready for disposal, or carbonized wastes for the carbonization function. So that's two functions, depending on the country, because for Philippines, we do disinfection because of some regulatory requirements. So currently, we currently operate 2 facilities in the Philippines, and we have 2 more on the pipeline by the year. We also have 3 hospital installations, with 7 more installations by the year, before the year ends. So we're gonna have 10 hospital installations. We're gonna have 4 facilities operating by this year. And in 2 years from now, we hope to be all key cities in the Philippines. And by 2022, 2 years from now, we hope to solve the medical waste problem of the whole Philippines. So that's the goal. 2 years time, in 2 years time, we will do it. So so we also have plans for expansion. We are now in talks in the Middle East and also in Indonesia, but we're now very focused now on Philippines. And well, if any one of you wants to help me say goodbye to medical incineration, you can visit me in the Philippines, or maybe over beer later. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. It's incredible what you do, my friend. The next entrepreneur is coming from down under, from Australia. Had the longest, I think it's the longest flight that you can take in the world without any stops. 17 hours from Australia to take this stage in front of you today to, in 3.5 minutes, tell you about his company, his life's work, Leaf Resources. Everybody, let's welcome Ken.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Daniel. As a people, we've been very innovative. Over time, we constantly improve our standard of living, but there's been unintended consequences, which you're hearing about today. Climate change, we overuse resources, and then we have situations that have been highlighted by people like Ellen MacArthur and her fabulous foundation, where these consequences cause really big impacts, and that statement is changing how we do things. But what if we could use some of the innovation that we have and solve some of these problems? What if we could make disposable coffee cups that really are recyclable, really are biodegradable, and really are made from renewable products? What if we could make more plastics that are biodegradable?
What if we could get rid of petroleum from our supply chain, as so many companies are trying to do? And more importantly, what if we could do this economically? We want to do it matching price and performance. No one will pay a premium for green and clean. You have to deliver on price and performance. So we can, using our process that we've patented, the glycol process, we take waste plant matter from agricultural processes. We take glycerol, which is a low-value waste product from biodiesel production, and we use a process to break them down into their component parts. So we produce industrial sugars. Not sugars like you put on Wheaties, but sugars nonetheless. And these sugars can be fermented or converted to virtually every petroleum-based chemical that we know today and we use in everyday life. We also get from the plant lignin, the tough stuff on the outside of the plant. And we can make a waterproofing compound for paper that is totally biodegradable, recyclable, renewable. But the real success of our process is we extract lots of value from this low-value waste plant material. But the glycerol we buy cheap from the biodiesel industry, it delivers a result in our process 25% more sugars than any other process. But when we recover it, and we do recover 95%, we are refining it as well. So there's a whole nother value proposition in the profit from the glycerol. And that goes into the commodity markets that you can see listed there, pharmaceuticals and other things. So, and doing all this in a sustainable way. We're not going to cart the biomass to the city. The jobs we create are going to be in rural areas. And that's important because they're hard to create in rural areas. We're turning waste into value. 2 waste streams into an incredible amount of value. And we're saving carbon, a considerable amount of carbon. Every time we replace a petroleum-based chemical, we're saving carbon. So where are we at? We've got a site in Malaysia. We're looking to build a biorefinery there. We've done our feasibility and we're heading towards our bankable feasibility. Malaysia's a great place. There's lots of biomass, there's lots of glycerol, and there's actually a national biomass strategy to turn biomass into chemicals. It's exactly what we do. We have some really strong, well-known international partners that are supporting us. We create jobs. Our first plant, which is a small plant, will create about 34 jobs, but we can multiply that 3 to 5 times in that place and then expand internationally. And for every small plant we do, we're saving over 700,000 tonnes of carbon a year. And you start multiplying that through what we can expand to, that's a considerable amount. So, Leaf Resources, we're sustainably and profitably turning waste into tomorrow's products. So if anyone wants to know more about our journey and have a chat, you'll find me outside afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. We are continuing on the theme of meeting entrepreneurs from our Asia Pacific cohort. And Devendra is certainly no exception to that. Devendra is leading a small revolution with thousands of farmers across the subcontinent, and he is disrupting the supply chain of cold storage. He's going to tell us all about that. Let's give him a very warm round of applause. Devendra, take the stage.
EcoZen is working to double farmers' income in India and other developing countries by building a great on-farm solution for cooling and producing the crop. If you look at developing countries like India, a lot of them have farms similar to this. Our story dates back to 2012, when, while going across the farms, we found out that there are a lot of farms where there is water in the bore, there is farm, but there is no crop. The farmer is only able to do one crop because of rain-fed irrigation. We found out this problem is so big that only 34.3% of arable land is irrigated. And a lot of farmers are not able to generate enough value out of their land. To address this, we built a smart controller which not only enables them to harness power, power from solar, because these places did not have access to energy, but also helps them conserve water. So this is Ecotron, and we brought this in 2014-15 after a lot of research and development. Meet Raju. He is the guy, farmer, where we went ahead and installed this. This is my co-founder, who is actually standing with him in a completely arid land. And 1.5 years from then, this is what the transformation is. The complete plastic tub becomes, so where he had a plastic tub to collect water, now he has infrastructure, and this is how he is smiling today, okay? But what we learned from him is that, while his production has gone up, his income hasn't proportionately gone up, because the challenge is that he is growing perishables, and he is sort of forced to sell it to the buyer who he gets at the earliest, otherwise the perishables will perish. And we really went down to find out that this problem is very big. People and farmers all across the country are losing their produce. The price of produce is varying from 1 cent per kg to $1 per kg. That's the kind of volatility which is there. And it nearly is as big as 3 times the consumption of United Kingdom. That is the amount of waste amounting to 7.3 billion USD we have. So we built the world's first, fastest possible installation cold room solution, which you can deliver on a farm. This particular product is a 20-feet container which can maintain temperatures of 2 to 10 degrees Celsius for 30 hours without any power. It does not use batteries for backup purposes. We instead convert water to ice, which maintains the temperature inside the room. And this solution is twice the life of lithium-ion and is almost half the price of lithium-ion batteries. And the innovative motor control makes it 20% more efficient than any other similar system. We made the product portable so that we could move from one place to another. We also have an app wherein you can actually choose the commodity, and it automatically programs everything. And the complete detail come on a platform wherein you see what is the produce, what is the quantity of the produce, and what price the farmer wants to sell it at. And we are now helping the farmers to reach the right markets at the right time, reduce wastage, and increase their income by 50%. Our model is such that even the smallest of the farmer can access our technology. We provide upfront sale, an asset on lease, and also a community model where a small farmer can access it for 1 cent per kg per day. And so far, we are 200 people who are working with 15,000 farmers, and we have grown 25x over the course of last 3 years, reaching to a revenue of $10 million. So while we really embark on a vision for 2022, we would look forward for partners who would want to source the produce from our farmers and also join us in this journey. And our vision is to really take the 15,000 farms to 100,000 farms by 2022 and really create access of fresh produce for 25 million people, bringing happiness, nutrition, and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Devendra. For that, we have 2 more entrepreneurs that are going to take stage. This is the penultimate company that you're going to hear from. The entrepreneur's name is Vinesh, and we heard earlier from Ken that Malaysia has a national agenda around biofuels and biodiesel and converting waste oils into productive oils. I think Vinesh is the poster child of that entire movement. Let's give him a very loud, warm round of applause as he takes stage. Vinesh from Malaysia.
I'm going to give you a glimpse of an oil company of 2050. At Fat Hopes Energy, we're trying to establish the next generation of waste and residue biofuel supply chain. The market today is a 32 million ton waste oil market out of Asia, and in the world, it's 3 times that. Our vision is to develop a sustainable fat, oil, and grease supply chain for advanced biofuels production. What do we mean by this, and what is this? Today, we have identified over 30 different raw materials waste-based raw materials, vegetable-based raw materials that can be produced or can be converted to biofuel, and we've commercialized 10 of them as you see on the screen. Now all these materials are lost in the ecosystem or in the supply chain, and it does not have much visibility for people who want to use them. Now we've addressed this problem by developing a remote monitoring system in tanks in the locations where the waste is produced, and we call these green oil wells. Renewable green oil wells that will continue to be replenished as long as population increases. We have a refinery out in Malaysia that has got a capacity to suck up almost 60% of all the waste and residue of Asia. However, we also are looking at expanding throughout the world. We've got a very sizable team today that's going to be tripling by 2020. We currently have offices in 4 countries. We source out of 8 of the countries in Southeast Asia. We cater for 18,000 points of origins. When I say that, I mean restaurants, factories, and hospitals or similar kind of buildings. And again, we're going to add 20,000 of these locations by 2020, and that's where the expansion plan is. We have established relationships with the biggest brands, the biggest fast food brands in the world by establishing these tank systems that we call green oil wells to be able to track accurately how much waste they produce, tag that to what new oil goes into the system, giving them a high level of efficiency for them to project how much more new oil they need. Apart from that, we're increasing revenue from their waste for them, and they have got total transparency on the materials that they're producing that aligns very well with their green agenda. We cater for 70% of the Southeast Asian market, and in 2017, we collected a total of 204,000 metric tons of waste oil. I've been honored to be named Forbes 30 Under 30 as well as the Entrepreneur of the Year by EY last year, and that has really accelerated our growth. Now, to put it into perspective, that number really is 50,000 of these road tankers. Right? We're just getting started. The market has a capacity of 32 million right now at the population that we are at. We are only catering for maybe 5% of that now, and we've got a huge potential to keep going. We definitely want to keep pushing this agenda, and waste today is creating a big problem in sewers, and it's also going back to food, which is highly carcinogenic. So please do reach out to me if you know anyone that would want to convert their waste oil to revenue streams. Thank you.
Woo! Thank you, Vinesh. He is too humble. What he didn't tell you is that he bootstrapped that company and last year generated over $100 million and is profitable and is just getting started. Vinesh, you're doing incredible work. He's not out here. You can clap for him. So I mentioned earlier we had 2 more entrepreneurs. We have 1 more Unreasonable Fellow, and then we have an entrepreneur who's going to do the final closing keynote as well. And that is a real treat. And we'll get to that in a second, but before we do, we have to welcome out our last Unreasonable Fellow, and last but the farthest thing from Lisa with Caverity. She's going to tell you something that is going to feel like science fiction, and I promise you this is nonfiction. This is the future of protein synthesis, and she is leading that revolution. Let's all give Lisa a very loud round of applause as she takes stage.
Imagine with me if we're all on a spaceship on our way to Mars. So we're all the crew in here. Many things would have to be solved before we can take that journey. One of the things that we'd have to figure out is how to recycle carbon. We are a carbon-based life form, and we need carbon in order to survive. So the scientists at NASA worked on this in the 60s and 70s during the space program and came up with an interesting idea. They looked at using single-celled organisms, microorganisms, as a way of recycling carbon on board spacecraft using minimal resources, minimal space, minimal water. And here's how it would work. These microorganisms are basically like microbial seeds, if you will. And they would capture carbon dioxide along with hydrogen from water and convert that into a nutritious food that the astronauts would eat, like plants do. And the astronauts would consume that, process the nutrients, and breathe out the carbon in the form of carbon dioxide, which the microbes would then capture, these seeds, and divide and make more food, and so on. And so a closed-loop carbon recycle could be created for us on our journey to Mars. So we have a lot of carbon here on Earth before we leave and go to Mars. And as we go from 7 billion people to 10 billion, we really must figure out a way to recycle our carbon better. So a colleague of mine, Dr. John Reed, and I looked at this NASA work, and we thought it was very fascinating. And we asked the question, can we take this NASA concept, using these single-celled organisms as seeds, to produce foods at a large scale here on Earth? And happily, we found that we could. These microorganisms are natural, they're in nature, and in the ecosystems where they thrive, they are nature's natural carbon recyclers. We'll call them supercharged carbon recyclers. And we have been able to make something amazing, a really nutritious protein, a protein flour, if you will, that has a really high protein content, higher than most plant-based proteins, rich in all the essential amino acids, rich in vitamins and minerals. And it can be used to make a lot of different products. Beyond that, we can even make oils with this type of technology. Something like a palm oil replacement, for instance. We call it Palm Plus. Palm oil is an ingredient to many of our products that we find on the shelves at our supermarkets, from ingredients to desserts, cookies and ice cream, to ingredient in pasta or cooking oil. And right now, they remove a lot of virgin rainforests in order to make room for palm plantations. So with this type of technology, you can use CO2 to make a palm oil replacement instead of removing rainforests. So this may sound very science fiction-y, as you said, but actually, who in here likes Pinot Noir? Who in here likes beer? All right, a few people like yogurt? These are all the products of microorganisms. From the beverage industry to food products, every single spoonful of yogurt is a spoonful of microbes. We call them probiotics. Sounds nice when you say it that way. So at Caverdi, we see an opportunity to take food production using microorganisms to the next level, from beer and wine and yogurt to proteins and oils. And we are commercializing our first products that are protein-based. We're scaling up. We have projects that we're deploying in Canada and in Europe with commercial partners. We work with large manufacturers who are the formulators that make the end products. And let me tell you about some exciting products that you'll see one day on the shelves as we scale up this technology. So you can imagine having your meat-free burger that has a low carbon footprint. As you know, modern agriculture, including animal agriculture, is a large contributor to greenhouse gases. In fact, modern ag contributes more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere than our planes, our trains, our trucks, and our cars combined. So we can have meat-free protein products. You can also imagine having more things like protein-enriched cereals, and of course we can have protein bars, protein shakes, lots of ways of getting protein from a sustainable source. So we're commercializing this technology now. And another reason why this is of benefit is that agriculture takes a lot of resources currently. In fact, an area the size of South America and Africa combined has been cleared for modern agriculture. So this is a challenge, and our technology can scale to produce products in less time and as well as less land. And in fact, 10,000 times less land. So if you were to clear the size of Texas to plant soy beans, the equivalent amount of protein that you get with this brewing, the CO2 brewing technology, you could make our protein with this technology. The same amount of land that you'd need for with soy, Texas, you would just look at an amusement park, something like Walt Disney World. That's the size that we would need for the CO2 brewing technology. So as we go from 7 billion to 10 billion people, we simply must do better. We must figure out a way to recycle carbon, use less resources, less land. And I'm really excited to be a part of the Unreasonable Group and the Unreasonable Fellows here. We've heard some amazing technologies and businesses people are building to do that. And at Converti, we are a part of that solution as well, as we commercialize solutions to recycle carbon to feed the world. Thank you.
So when 5 years from now you eat a hamburger that is meatless and made out of carbon dioxide, you'll remember that you first heard about it here from Lisa. Science fiction turned nonfiction. Incredible. Thank you all so much, entrepreneurs. Before we close out with gratitude, which is the way we started today, we're going to welcome one more entrepreneur up to the stage. Not an Unreasonable Fellow, but a pioneer in this entire ecosystem, in this entire space. Earlier there was a panel on impact investing. I think that probably one of the first people to ever even speak that language of impact investing was our next speaker, the keynote for the evening, Jacqueline Novogratz. She is an incredible entrepreneur. She's an incredible person. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's an investor. She's founder, CEO of Acumen Fund. She's an author. She's a legend in my book. And I think we should give her a very warm welcome as she takes the stage and closes us out.
Too beautiful. And I also just want to say welcome to all of you and to say thank you to Barclays. Deborah Goldfarb and the citizenship team have been just wonderful partners to Acumen and to hold this. It's so important because if there's ever been a time in history to be unreasonable, it's now. And having just flown in from the United States, I couldn't reinforce that enough. But Daniel asked if I would say a little bit about my story, which is a little bit intimidating given all of your stories are so important and so relevant because you're so future-oriented. But here goes. I feel very ancient. Just to let you know, I started off on Wall Street, actually during a financial crisis when we were in hyperinflation down in Brazil, and most of my time was spent in Latin America. And I saw how much I loved the tools of business and finance and investing, but not that the fact that the poor couldn't even get into the doors of the banks, let alone imagine having a loan. So at the ripe old age of 25, as one did, I moved to Kigali, Rwanda, and ended up founding the first microfinance bank in that country. Really started to see what it meant to do something crazy and being told that you were crazy on a regular basis and that it could work. And before we knew it, we were the biggest lender in the country. But I was still called Msichana Kidogo, which means little girl in Swahili. And so I decided I needed more tools, more skills, more networks, and somehow ended up at Stanford Business School. And it was a really important time to be going to the business school because a month after I got there, the Berlin Wall fell down. And that was really the end of history. Capitalism had won. Communism had lost, and now the world was starting to open itself to each other. Steve Jobs got on the stage my second week of school and talked about the technology revolution, and the only problem was it was truly at the beginning. Not a single one of us owned a cell phone, and only the rich kids owned 25-pound laptop computers. The rest of us met and dated down in the basement of the computer lab. Which is where I spent all my time. And you think about 30 years, when you're 30 years old, feels like an eternity. But when you're my age, it goes really fast. And you think about how the world has changed in those 30 years. But even though it was such an exciting time in so many ways, I was a misfit. I felt like I had just been in Rwanda where we were in a barter system, and now I was in Palo Alto, which kind of felt like a loaf of Wonder Bread compared to Rwanda. And we were talking about Black-Scholes theory and vector analysis and linear programming, and I kept thinking about how does it pertain to the poor. And in my second semester, really thinking I might drop out, listening to the professor's pitch, this elderly gentleman in his 70s already came up in a houndstooth jacket and a fedora, and he said, "Why do civilizations rise and fall? Why do some people get on the couch at age 30 and essentially never leave, and others continue to renew themselves with this childlike curiosity well into their 80s and 90s?" And he was going to teach a course on organizational, institutional, and personal renewal. And so I kind of fell in love on the spot. I marched myself into his office, and I started a conversation that would last the next 17 years of my life until he died. And his name was John Gardner. And he was the only Republican on Lyndon Johnson's all-Republican, all-Democrat cabinet. And he was the leader of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. And so, in essence, this Republican was pushing the Great Society, the war on poverty, in the rooms with Martin Luther King and John Lewis. And John Gardner was the man who was bridging. And he stood for integrity, and he stood for change, and he stood for community. And he taught me so much about being interested and not focused on being interesting, and that sometimes you have to play hardball to make change. John also was a man of such deep character that though he was very close to Johnson, at one point he decided the Vietnam War had really hurt the United States and the world, and he resigned. And the thing he went on to do was to create a nonprofit at age 54 called Common Cause, which was a grassroots citizen movement. And I think about him all the time, even today. And I share that with you because I think not only do I miss him and wish we had more John Gardners, but when I think about who can be those moral revolutionaries, it's all of you guys. And even though you might think of yourselves as entrepreneurs that are disrupting sectors, and we need that, what we really need is a moral revolution. Because Steve Jobs was right back in 1989. Technology has changed everything. There are more cell phones on the planet than human beings. You all know this stuff. And yet, we are at a moment where those same tools of technology and capitalism, which has done so much for all of us, for people all around the world, has also created a moment in history where we are more unequal, we are more divided, and we don't trust each other. And so this next chapter, which is really your chapter, has got to be to move from a technology revolution, while it's still going to be going on, to a moral revolution. And that moral revolution has to be based in building a world in which we think first and foremost about the poor and the vulnerable and the earth, and we build from there. And that's really what I want to talk about, because that's really been so much about my life trajectory. In 2001, when we started Acumen, of course, the world was in a really different place. I thought that we were trying to create a new model for philanthropy, because banking had taught me that the private sector and markets play a hugely important role, and they're also limited. Too often, we see the poor excluded or exploited. On the other side, working in Rwanda and then going through a genocide showed the perils of top-down approaches, either aid, government, or charity. And that maybe there was this thing in the middle that we call patient capital, a true precursor to impact investing, where we could raise philanthropic funds and unabashedly invest equity loans. Patient, we thought, was 8 to 10 years. It's stretched from 10 to 15 years. But it takes that long sometimes to build a sector. And when we would get money back, because we were here for the public good, we would reinvest in innovation for the poor. And we would measure what mattered, not just what could count. And yet, and this is where I relate to so many of you guys, when I would go to Wall Streeters, despite the fact that I had an MBA, I had started a bank, at several other institutions, and I had worked on Wall Street, and I would tell people this exciting new model that we were going to try, over and over people would say, you know, we really appreciate your energy, Jacqueline, but you clearly don't understand how business operates. Which was a little humiliating, because by now I'm like almost 40. And they'd say, you know, I make my money here, and I focus on maximizing shareholder wealth, which is what we learned was our ethical duty back in 1989 in Stanford. And then I give it away over here as charity. And yet, there was this group of crazy early adopters that go along with you, and I learned that leadership is as much about being accompanied. It's as much about a partnership and followership as it is leadership. And so with that crazy group of people, Acumen got started. And it took a really long time to start to prove this stuff out. But luckily, we found some unreasonable entrepreneurs. I'm only going to talk about 2 of them, and I'm not going to talk about Manoj because I hear you have already heard from him, and Husk Power, but 2 that we share with you who truly were unreasonable and who, without whom we would not have succeeded, because the capital providers and the entrepreneurs have to walk in lockstep if we're going to really disrupt in a way that makes change and not just shareholders wealthy. 2 of my favorite human beings on the planet, Ned Tozeman and Sam Goldman. I almost was mean to them and showed them a picture of their before and after when people ask me, how patient is your capital? Because nobody personifies it for me like these guys. When they walked into our office as grads from business school with this $30 really big bulky light and this dream to eradicate kerosene, we were intrigued. We thought they were crazy. We had no idea how hard it was going to be. Neither did they. And it was 10 years after the fact that Ned finally confessed to me that when they first got that $200,000 at the prototype stage, they looked at each other and were like, oh God, what's the worst that can happen? 10,000 people get lights, and we're like, we call it a day. And I was like, I was really glad you told me this 10 years after. Because in the first 3-4 years, we had no idea. I remember walking with Sam through villages in India and him saying, how do you price a product in a market that doesn't exist for people who make $2 a day? And I was like, that's a good question. And we knew that we had kerosene, which was 40 cents a day, but we didn't have financing. So we could only look at a monthly basis, and that didn't really work. There was too much friction in the marketplace. And so now you see those first few years was everything that they could control to try to move from a push market where a lot of grant financing was also going into trying to build a market and help people understand that there was a product that would change their lives and that they could actually trust, and that they could fight the diesel mafias and the kerosene mafias that did not want a disruptive product, to 2011 where you got mobile banking coming into Kenya. And when you could marry mobile banking and people could pay in the same way that they pay for kerosene on a daily basis, you could get an energy revolution. And what D-Light taught us was not how people made decisions, but that there was this burgeoning, or nascent, now burgeoning, energy sector that wanted to live. And we needed to find the right financing, we needed to find the right entrepreneurs, and we needed to find ways to accompany them. Today, 85 million people later, D-Light stands in this most extraordinary way. But I think, and this goes to Barclays, which is so interested in workforce development, I think we sometimes overlook the fact that when you are solving a critical problem for people who are poor, you're also creating jobs. And you think about the fact that it's been 140 years since Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, and 60% of Africa is still unelectrified, which is a situation that is not only unproductive, but it's unjust. And frankly, it's dangerous. How do we talk about the refugee crisis without thinking about finding ways to enable Africa to develop itself? I'm reminded of that when I get to visit the company and the customers, and importantly, the people who work for them. And these 2 guys, on your left, Dixon, and on your right, Evelyn, also remind me that in this moral revolution, there's a whole new story about what we can dream. I grew up with the American dream. Go out, make a lot of money, give back, what those bankers were telling me about. These guys at D-Light, who are agents selling the lights, they're not yet 30 years old. And Dixon feels so lucky to be so wealthy selling these lights that he's already adopted 2 street kids in addition to his own birth child. And Evelyn is waiting to go to college until she's gotten everyone in her village, 500 households, fully electrified, because she said, I have this privilege, I have to give back. And so they've kind of reversed the American dream, and I feel like the African dream might be a narrative that we need to celebrate and talk about more. that we are walking together and we give back and then we think about ourselves. Another one of my favorite two guys, Alex and Jonathan Cedar, BioLite. And their model, as you all know, because they're unreasonable as well, was to look at disrupting first the cook stove market. I always thought I knew a lot about cook stoves because I looked at our first ones in 1986, which is kind of humiliating in this crowd of some of you not being born yet. But when I was living in Rwanda and the USAID came in with a $30 million cook stove project, got them out to all the people in the collines and the hillsides, and then nobody wanted to use them because they were so heat efficient and the hillsides are really cold at night. And so they would just be piled up as decor. And it has struck me how little we've progressed in those 30 years when it's come to cook stove. But BioLite is really different. And what's fascinating is not only the bifurcated strategy that they've used and why we need to learn from each other, because first selling to the camping market, the higher end camping market, and then looking at whether you can subsidize a much more efficient stove. But when I think about cook stoves and I look at energy and electricity, there's actually a lot more friction in the cook stove market. It's harder because with light, you really replace that kerosene overnight. And it's for people, what people will say to us is we go from living in the past to living in London, a woman once told me in a rural Nairobi. With cook stoves, you're reducing smoke, you're reducing the bad stuff that happens to you, but you're not fully eliminating it. And so we've got a ways to go. But these guys have done just an extraordinary job creating one of the best stoves out there. But Jonathan, being an unreasonable entrepreneur, also made a pivot. And what's been so exciting to me as someone watching this company is to watch him not only pivot into the rooftop solar market, but do so in a way that's building off of D-Light's learning. Because we're watching this market from above segment itself. And so it used to be as a pioneer, and Acumen was that same pioneer, we used to have to do everything. We were in every sector, we were in every level of capital, we were way too broad, but nobody else was doing it. And so pioneers just do what's necessary. Now you're seeing that market specialize, and BioLite is one of those companies that is starting to do that in two ways. One, recognizing that they are really good at product. Can they marry themselves to a company that's really good at financing? So they've created this radical collaboration with Angaza. And it's a very different strategy than D-Light has, which is fully vertically integrated. And we don't know which is going to succeed best, maybe both. But what excites me at accompanying each of these is these guys have the character, the resilience, and the grit to take it to the nth mile. And so you should feel so proud of Husk and D-Light and BioLite in your community, and find ways really to think about how do we partner and work across, because I think this is another piece of the work that's got to be done. Those were my slides for BioLite. Sorry. One of the reasons my job is so great is, as I said, we get to look across. And over the last 15 years of doing off-grid energy investing, we got to see all of this work happening. And now that allowed us to build a hypothesis, which is a growing hypothesis for me, which is that we make a mistake when we start with the capital. And I think too many impact investors start and end with the capital. They see investment as the be-all and the end-all, and the whole impact conversation ends up being, well, what are your returns? Well, if you're not making really good market returns, it's not really investing. Rather than, what value are you bringing to the world? How do we move from a shareholder model to a stakeholder model? And can we remind ourselves that we are trying to build viable companies that are reaching the poorest people on the planet? And so within energy, once we took that philanthropic capital in a patient way and we could build out an ecosystem, then we can build the $70 million for-profit fund side by side to help scale those companies, including D-Light. And that is where the model is starting to build, and that is where I am getting more unreasonable, because I am starting to stand for, you want to work in energy? We can do it without that much subsidy, although as we're measuring change, we know that about 10% of the population is never going to be able to afford electricity unless we find a subsidy. On the other hand, you want to work in education for the poor, we need a different model that is a public-private partnership, because no child on this planet should be expected to get the quality of education that their parent could afford if we really want to create a world in which everyone can flourish. So by taking that 10-year patient approach, by focusing on a mix of companies across the ecosystem, we can now also have a hypothesis that off-grid electricity for Africa is faster, cheaper, and more effective than extending the government grid, and build up enough data so that we can really make a case for both how the public sector can work, how the private sector can work, and where we fill the gaps, so that as a world we can actually get to the goal of energy for all and take it seriously. So it's been 17 years, which, as I said, if 30 didn't feel very long, 17 certainly doesn't feel very long, although I got a lot of scars and wrinkles that somehow came along in those 17 years. And yet today, seeing the power of patient capital reaching 270 million people around the world, and seeing the power of building companies that are sustainable, not just profitable, not just impactful, has been extraordinary. And it's where, in so many ways, I feel like we're at a new chapter. But when I step back and I look at the 120 companies that we've invested in between our nonprofit and for-profit funds, and I think about our wild success stories and our flaming failures, we can have good technical conversations about, business models and external events and corruption, but the biggest issue is really around character. And it isn't only about corruption, which hurts when you have to leave a company because of it. It's about a lack of resilience. It's about fear that gets in our way when things go badly. It's about greed that gets in our way when things really go well. And either the fear or the greed in partnerships can either make someone go AWOL or can make the partnership get so twisted that the company hurts. It's about, as an entrepreneur, not having the self-awareness to know that probably if you're a really great entrepreneur, you're not such a great operator, and you need to find people who are. You don't want to believe it, you probably aren't going to succeed. And so now we're starting to look at a different spectrum of qualities in terms of the entrepreneur who we are backing, rather than just getting completely obsessed with spreadsheets and projections, because the projections usually don't make that much sense to us anyway. And the character-based makes all the sense in the world. What's so exciting to me is in hearing you and what you all are doing and seeing a new kind of entrepreneur that is at the forefront, the vanguard of that moral revolution. People like Emily Stone, who discovered in the work that she was doing in environmental commodities that the chocolate industry has one of the most broken supply chains in the world. It's a $100 billion industry, and 5 million smallholder farming families represent 90% of all the cocoa that's used in it. And over 90% of those 5 million families make under $2 a day. Many of them are living in indentured servitude, particularly in West Africa. And so Emily did what any unreasonable person would do. She decided just to ignore the rules, that coffee had been priced according to global commodities markets and futures trading, which often bore very little relevance to what was happening at the ground for the farmers. And so she created a new model, albeit through a social enterprise model at the margin in the luxury premium market, but where she immerses herself with the farmers, understands their production costs, and then negotiates 3 to 4 times what those costs are. Then she sells them to companies not only like Dandelion and other cool artisanal companies, but to Valrhona and other high premium chocolate companies, because in the relationships that she's building and in the training she's given, she can now deliver some of the highest quality cocoa beans in the world. That's allowing us as Acumen now to have conversations with the chocolate companies who really want to look at their supply chains, and we're building an initiative initiative called Cocoa Interrupted. And we're seeing a number of young entrepreneurs now in cocoa and coffee taking on these profit sharing, revenue sharing, and we are also engaging in ownership transfer to very poor communities, particularly in post-conflict areas. Some of you are also involved in the circular economy and seeing entrepreneurs that are daring with the courage to go out and try these things in ways that also have a level of kindness and consideration. Ankit Agarwal was sitting on the banks of the Ganges with his buddy from Czechoslovakia who noticed all of these insecticide-drenched flowers kind of seeping across the Ganges, and he was like, how come those flowers are in the river? And Ankit had never really thought about it, but people bring flowers to the temples as gifts to the gods. And then the priests can't throw them in the waste bin because that would be sacrilegious, so they throw them in the sacred river, even though it pollutes and makes everybody unhealthy. And so he's built a company where he collects it on a daily basis, but he only hires women from the scavenger caste. And the scavenger caste is the lowest caste of the untouchable caste in India. These are the people that, with hands and little plastic plates, pick up human feces and clean the toilets. And so Ankit only hires women from this community. He picks them up in a bus on a daily basis, serves tea, clean water, and you should see this production. They take the flowers, they compost them, they turn them into incense sticks and eco-styrofoam, and he's just gotten a patent for vegan leather in this most industrial of towns, Kanpur, which is a big leather producing place, which goes hand in hand with the woman you just heard from, as we're starting to think about the products that we use, that we consume in a way that's gentler on the earth, but in this way really enables human dignity. And Javad Aslam in Pakistan, we've worked with for 14 years. And I watched this man first build a model for Sharia-compliant mortgages for the very poor, the first ever in Pakistan. Hugely courageous. Wouldn't pay a bribe. Took him 18 months to get the land registered. Felt humiliated the whole time because people were like, how's that housing going? And he was like, Jacqueline, I haven't even put a spade in the earth. And I was like, hey, look, we're patient. We're hanging in there with you. And now he's got the first 3,000 people houses. It's the biggest and only affordable housing in the country. He just raised 15 million as a first tranche to take this to the next level. And he sold it to a company that bought half of his. And the first thing Javad did after that long slog was take the other 50% of his company and divide shares to create an ESOP with ownership from himself as CEO down to the guy who serves tea. And these kinds of models of a more inclusive capitalism for a kinder world in which we not only need each other, but are part of each other, are the most inspiring stories that I'm finding for this next chapter. And it's hard. You all know how hard it is. And I'm sure part of you are like, I can barely make payroll, and she's asking me to have like a moral revolution in the midst of it. But if not us, if not now, as we are seeing so much division, so much anger, so much hatred in a winner-take-all society, and we know that we don't want that to be ours. We don't want it on us. And yet, as we try to create new institutions, because the old ones are no longer working, we don't have a roadmap. At Stanford, it was super easy to study Milton Friedman and be told in ethics, just make your shareholders wealthy, that is your job. Now, we got to be thinking about the earth, the poor, our neighbors, the people across the world, and we still need to make a profit. Hard to do. And so at Acumen, because we couldn't give a roadmap, we've built a compass, a moral compass. It's one we use. We offer it to you to take. But I thought I might just read it, if you would indulge me. It's really high up here. It starts by standing with the poor, listening to voices unheard, and recognizing potential where others see despair. It demands investing as a means, not an end, daring to go where markets have failed and aid has fallen short. It makes capital work for us, not control us. It thrives on moral imagination, the humility to see the world as it is and the audacity to imagine it as it could be. It's having the ambition to learn at the edge, the wisdom to admit failure, and the courage to start again. It requires patience and kindness, resilience and grit, a hard-edged hope. It's leadership that rejects complacency, breaks through bureaucracy, challenges corruption, doing what's right, not what's easy. It's the radical idea of creating hope in a cynical world, changing the way the world tackles poverty, and building a world based on dignity. For us, for me, it all comes down to human dignity. How do we choose to walk in the worlds, and how do we enable other people to flourish? Can we take that definition of success and turn it on its head, each and every one of us, so that we evaluate how we're doing based not on how much money we make, nor even how much we give away, but by the amount of human energy we release in the world. For me, the great joy of my job is to ultimately sit with the customers who you all serve, and to hear their stories, listen to their aspirations, and to remind myself that every day, everything I use, everything I eat, everything I wear is dependent on the toil, the life, the work of people I might never meet around the world, and that in an interdependent world, which is the world we live in now, we rise and we fall together. Martin Luther King has said that love without power is anemic and sentimental, but that power without love is reckless and abusive. And if there has ever been a time in our life to marry love and power, whether we're in the corporate sector, whether we're unreasonable entrepreneurs, whether we're in government, it is now. And so, Daniel, I thank you for the work you do. Each and every one of you, I thank you for the work you do. It is long and it is hard and it is worth it. And the world depends on you for it. So, thank you.
I feel like Jacqueline should have stayed out here for that applause, not me. Jacqueline has been a true vanguard for the morality of capitalism, and clearly remains just as rebellious and iconoclastic and visionary. I like to say that the sustainability revolution is happening. It's as disruptive as the Industrial Revolution at the pace of the digital revolution. And what I've learned from that is that, most importantly, it needs to be a moral revolution. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for your words of wisdom and for those remarkably kind words. I've never been so proud for somebody to say that they felt unreasonable so many times. In closing, I'm going to end with saying gratitude, and I'm going to pass it over to James Todd from the Barclays team to say some words as well. But I just wanted to highlight some of the sentiments that Jacqueline was focusing on. This partnership is uncommon between Unreasonable and Barclays. It is unusual, and it is not a partnership that says sponsored by or in partnership with. It says created with. We do stand on the shoulders of giants, all of us. This was co-created, co-inspired, co-designed, and co-founded with Barclays. And we have a massive debt of gratitude to the entire team at Barclays. There's many of you here who have co-founded this initiative. Joe McGrath mentioned earlier that they extended it by 4 years. I didn't know we could say that, but because he did, I can as well, which means the revolution has just begun. The entrepreneurs that you met today, you met entrepreneurs from 1 year of this partnership. And that wasn't even all of them. Some of them couldn't come in for family reasons, for business reasons as well. But this is a revolution. This is a revolution in what is possible. We are paving the future. These entrepreneurs are the vanguard of not just the technical revolution, but also the moral revolution. And we have such a wonderful debt of gratitude and appreciation to the team at Barclays, to the entrepreneurs who took a bet on placing their time and investing it into this partnership as well, and to all of you for lending us your hearts, your minds, your ears, your eyes, for the entire duration of this afternoon and hopefully for afterwards. But I'm going to let James Todd wrap this up with his own words as a representative and team member from Barclays and a dear friend. James.
Thank you, Daniel. So I'm James Todd. I run the domestic private bank for Barclays in the UK. This is the second year I've had the privilege of standing alongside Daniel at the end of this event. It marks the end of another incredibly successful year of the partnership between Barclays and Unreasonable. It marks the end of another fantastic afternoon here. I'm sure you'll all agree at the Unreasonable World Forum. So much to celebrate. I love this event. I sit up there in the sort of like heavens and just in open mouth awe at the talent and the energy on display, and just the sort of pervading sense of good being done for all of our sakes. So it's fantastic. But I have to admit that I hit this sort of sine wave of high, and then I find myself in a deep sort of low where I have this existential self-worth, career-based crisis, asking myself, what am I doing with my life? Do something inspirational immediately. I should explain. Private bank. I'm a private bank. I run a team of 50 private banks. What do we do? Bankers. What do we do? We look after some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the UK. We help them manage their wealth to make sense of it, to create an investment strategy for it, to protect it for generations to come. It's a valuable work, undoubtedly. But it isn't removing plastic from the ocean, and it isn't recycling carbon. And in the sort of grand scheme of collecting heaven tokens, it's definitely mid-pack. But then I sort of look up and I spot the faces of some of the clients around us, and know that they're here to make a difference, know that they're here to share their experiences, their capital, their ideas with the next generation of entrepreneurs up there. So that makes me feel encouraged. And the second point, yesterday, the great and the good of Barclays senior management and me were at the Rise accelerator in Shoreditch. Again, sharing their, we created brain trusts, as Daniel said. We supported, challenged, mentored, and introduced, hopefully, our network to those individuals for the greater good. So suddenly I'm encouraged. I can look in the eyes of my children tonight and say, I am a Barclays banker, and that's okay. We do good in the world. Thank you. I think that deserves a clap. And then, as we do every night, I sort of say to them, hey kids, what did you learn today? And they're getting smarter as they get older, and they then say, no, Daddy, what did you learn? And I will open my book, and I will give you a brief summary, because you all want to get away. The rooftops of Delhi are cleaning Indian air. Slap your forehead, and great gravity-fed ideas will come out. There is a lot of battery and hydrogen fuel cell love in the world. A double-decker bus can drive 200 miles on zero emissions. You can build a fuel refinery in your parents' garage. The royal family drives cars that run on the waste from fine cheeses and fine wines, as you would naturally expect. World shipping produces 1 billion tons of CO2 a year. We can rest easy because I know that James at Magnus is going to make the high seas, environmentally sound over the next 20 years. Rice has a husk. I'm not a chef. I didn't know that. And it can help kids do homework and get educated in countries around the world where it's not so easy to do so. There are aero farms in the world where the farming is done by data, not tractors. In 7 years, 5.3 billion people will have a scarcity of water. But with the air and evaporation and Johnny's tech, no one will have to be thirsty again. So that's fantastic. I'll keep going. A pig has a pancreas. You can brew chickens. This is my own idea, bear with me. Terra Mea, I believe that's how you pronounce it, should produce aspirin showers for hangovers. Right, smart labels are cool, and if they stay cool, they stay smooth. The perfect pitch, what's the problem? How do you solve it? Why are you best? Get the right management team and a therapist. We're almost there.
90% of the world's population breathe polluted air, but 100 miles Sophie is going to change that at a car at a time with the aero bubble. You can flat pack a house. Amazon will deliver it for you. Kelda will give you the best shower you've ever had, efficiently. You can shave using a yogurt pot. Your eye holds the key to over 300 diseases. And Jerry creates pure water, amazing cups of tea, and angry teenagers. A patient produces half a kilo of medical waste. Most of it is burnt. We can change that. Don't put industrialized sugar on your cereal. It's far better fermented. Raju doesn't smile easily, but his fields are massively irrigated. Green oil wells will replace oil tankers eventually, and that is a great thing. Lastly, in space, no one can hear you scream if you're a microorganism. They're the ones you eat. Every day's a school day. By that stage, the children will be asleep. So look, I'm here to do thank yous. First of all, thank yous to the entrepreneurs. You create hope. You do amazing things. You're going to change the world. So thank you on behalf of all of us for doing that. It's not easy. Yeah, indeed. I think. It's not easy standing up here. It's definitely not easy standing up here if English isn't your first language, so amazing job, well done. Thank you to the panelists. Your reflections, your thoughts, your sort of sage, wise counsel. You can read much in books, but to hear the spoken word, I think it sort of like resonates more and it's more lasting in the memory, so thank you. Thank you to Jacqueline for sharing your personal story, your investment story, much to reflect on, I'm sure, for all of you as you go about your days. Thank you to Daniel. Thank you to the Unreasonable Group. It's our 2nd anniversary. I believe that the gift in the US is cotton. So we've got you some Barclays pajamas at the back there. I don't think he does a lot of sleeping, however, if you do, wear them with pride. But seriously, thank you. Your ability to bring people together for the greater good, to energize them, and just to keep going until it gets done is truly inspirational. So thank you for everything you do. Lastly, you lot, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. I'm shutting up very quickly. There's a reception. There's drink. The food was a triumph last year, so hopefully, fingers crossed, it's the same this year. Please, your job is not done. Go and speak to the entrepreneurs. If someone's resonated with you, just go up to them. You can offer, I'm sure, ideas, network. Of course, capital's nice too. But there'll be something there, so just ask the question. I'm done. Thank you all. Thank you.
That's it. We're done. To the reception. Thank you, James.